25-year professional wrestling veteran Kim Junho will teach you the impossible. Every person has an impossible dream. He has professional wrestling. Since childhood, he wanted to know what it was like to be a world champion and receive worldwide love. And although in ordinary competitions playing to the public through a microphone, makeup and costumes, all losers and winners are predetermined. For them who show all this with their work, everything was for real. The days when you stand on stage and are filled with pride in yourself, they stopped having anything to do with him. Now all that's left is hard work at the construction site. A partner approached an elderly sad man and asked what was wrong with his face. He asked if it was true that he was a professional wrestler. He replied that he was even in the WWF, but that was a long time ago. His partner asked who he was competing with. Rockhold and Dofak were famous back then. Memories came flooding back to the man. He is young and strong and accelerates, jumps up easily, and does a moonsault in the air. All spectators freeze in delight. Is this Asian really a professional? No, he is an amateur. But is an amateur capable of such a thing? On the 4th of June 2002, there was incredible heat. It was then that he learned a lesson that changed his life. The trainer had a practice fight with him and was very pleased that he had finally found something worthwhile. The elderly man stood up and told his partner that he had nothing to do with the people he named and that he had to go to work. A mysterious martial artist from the East, always losing to the fool named Kung Fury. In America, as in all wrestling organizations, it is almost impossible for an Asian to get anywhere. Therefore, he gave up too early and did not have time to become famous. Now he is an ordinary hard worker who has nothing. Kim Junho, a second-generation Korean immigrant. If he had then abandoned all his prejudices and still tried to fight and show his desire to win to the whole world, then the world would accept him too. Frustrated, Kim made an awkward movement one moment, and he fell down from a great height. Everything flashed before his eyes with bright lights. He remembered that one day in the past, he saw such bright lights in the hall, and he dreamed that he entered the arena in his current form and was announced as a fighter from China. He shouts to the ghosts from the past that he is from Korea, and it ends up in the trailer. He sees the reflection of a young guy in the mirror. They knock on the door and call him by name, Jun. Junho sees that he has come to him and his jaw drops. The guy on the doorstep says he couldn't wake him up. He brought him sandwiches for breakfast, 30 years ago. 2002, when there was an abnormal heat wave in America. At that time, Dongho was an ordinary wrestler who liked to take photos with professionals and fans. He also traveled in a trailer all over America. Did he really go back to that time? Jun went to wash his face to calm down. All his senses tell him that this is not a dream. This is reality. 30 years ago on this day, the WWF recruited new employees. Years of honed skills and experience in a young body that can do anything. And if you take this into account, the result may be completely different. His friend stood under the bathroom door and asked if Jun was all right. Junho thought that this guy standing outside the door, on the brink of life and death, had spent a lot of time with him in his 20s. He's walking trash. It was on that day that he framed Junho. He fed him a laxative sandwich and the results were very bad. Jun was drying himself off after a shower and thinking about revenge after so many years. From a strong blow to the door, the comrade fell to the floor and did not intend to get up. Kim Junho decided on a second try. The best in wrestling always comes from the WWF. There are many cases when it was their athletes who became world stars. The icon of that generation is Sean Sheen. If Junho had been able to debut then, they would have become friends. Some guy put his hand on Jun's shoulder and asked if he was worried. It was Sean Shin, who said that the guy was very pale and he could take him to the first aid station. Junho replied that everything was fine and thought about it, that he didn't expect to meet Sean so quickly. He asked Sean if he was worried, and he replied that he was having trouble bouncing off the rope. Jun replied that Sean should not worry. He has such a physique that they will take him right away. Sean was surprised how the newcomer knew his name, and Jun replied that everyone knows the famous bodybuilder. They met and decided to stick together. They shook hands firmly. Now Junho has definitely decided that he will pass the final exam together with Sean, and he will start working with him. An hour later, the examiners were still not there and they were waiting. Some guys showed off in the ring. A huge man came into the ring and shouted at the guys who allowed them to get into the ring. One of those who came shouted that they were tired of waiting, but the man grabbed him by the shoulder. And the next second, the blonde flew to the other end of the ring. The other two guys started to protest, but they were caught in a powerful grip and couldn't get out. The man threw the guys aside and said that they definitely failed the exam. He turned to the people standing below, called them amateurs with muscles, and he suggested that they leave immediately if they are not able to work and learn more difficult tricks. Let those who came here just to earn extra money also leave. He was a former professional wrestler from the Kingdom of Tonga who controlled all the wrestlers in the GCV. His ring name is Paku. What made him famous was not only his impressive skills, but also his passion for real fights. He laughed at the police with batons. He has a fairly gentle character, but if you provoke him, call him a bastard, for example, he turns into a demon. Paku announced that the main selection now begins. The first thing the candidates were tested was their ability to fall. The basics. You can't become a professional wrestler if you can't fall properly. The coach called the next candidate, Sean. Sean showed off his ability to fall, but he screwed up. Junho was very surprised by this, and the coach shouted that all the candidates today are very stupid. With a fall like that, Sean will soon break his neck. The trainer chased him out of the ring. Next was Junho, and the coach barely read his name, and then with a mistake. Junho walked towards the ring along the way, saying his name correctly. The trainer assessed the new candidate's musculature, and he asked if the guy really came from the street. He confirmed that it was from the street. Then Paku said that he should thank his parents for giving birth to him with such data. He said that the newcomer can show what he can do, and Junho took a running start, jumped into the ring and fell. Paku said he is finally seeing great results, and the guy can leave the ring. But Dongho made a jump, moon somersault from the post. All the spectators were surprised. Then Paku climbed into the ring and said he wanted to see if this show-off had the balls to fight him. Junho stood opposite the coach and was confused. He regretted that he had overdone it, and shouted that he needed to get ready. But Paku had already grabbed him by the shoulders and asked if the guy had shit his pants. With these words, he threw Junho far away, and he flew into the ropes. He quickly jumped away from them. Paku was already rushing towards him like a bulldozer, who used a technique on the guy. Clothesline, a movement in which a fighter runs towards another, extends his arm towards the body, hitting the opponent in the neck or chest and knocks him over. Junho fell to the floor and the coach shouted that the fall was great. But that was not all. Paku easily lifted Junho, grabbed him and turned him upside down. Junho felt really bad at this time, although he tried to resist. Paku yelled that there was going to be a body slam, and immediately used it on the guy. He lifted it over his head and threw it on the floor. Junho lay in the ring almost unconscious. Paku silently looked at the guy and did not try to help him. Junho opened his eyes and asked indignantly that the coach would just watch and not call a doctor. Paku laughed, said that the guy was impudent, and congratulated him on his victory. He was the first to qualify. There was a whisper among the candidates, was this guy really an amateur? Junho stood under the shower, and remembered his first fight with his trainer. He prayed that if this was a dream, then he didn't want to wake up. This meticulous and cold-blooded Park, Junho will still force him to recognize the guy's abilities. He got out of the shower, and thought that even though he was almost accepted, he didn't feel completely happy. At this time, Sean went home with the other candidates. He and Junho ran into each other in the hallway, and Jun was shocked to see Sean leaving. How could the great Sean not pass? Sean said he was turned down. They said he had no chance. Junho knew that Sean was a future star. How could this happen? Then he remembered that Sean failed the first time. The next year he passed all the tests with flying colors because he prepared a lot. Junho thought that he had not gone through that same life in his past, but he was able to change his fate, and there must be a way to change Sean's fate. A thought came to his mind which he voiced, let Sean find a job here. He can become a coach for starters. Sean didn't believe it was possible, but Junho offered to become his training partner. Sean's jaw dropped at the offer. How will he be Junho's partner? In professional wrestling, everyone has their own training partner to balance out the strength. Therefore, everyone in the GCV could also refuse the exam for the role of this partner. The guys ran to find out how to pass the exam and hoped that they would make it today. Paku was stunned by such impudence. The guy failed his exams and wants to immediately become a training partner. Junho said that Sean is very talented and he vouches for him. Paku responded by saying that how can someone who has just been through it himself vouch for someone? He had never seen a more impudent guy. Nevertheless, Puck liked these two blockheads and signed the necessary documents. Both guys were very happy about this. Thus began the training of the two future superstars. They helped each other from constant training in the gym, up to a balanced diet. They didn't forget about wrestling. After a few weeks, all the athletes were very tired. Paku was yelling at the next guy in the ring that if everything didn't work out for him now, he would fire everyone. One of the wrestlers was different from the newcomers. People whispered that he was from a famous wrestling family from Canada, and the main star of this family is Russell Hart. The wrestlers were discussing which important people came to their training. Hart watched Junho's training closely. After training, Junho went to the gym to pump iron. Hart walked up to him and looked closely. Junho stood up and stared at Hart. There was such a feeling that they were going to fight. But instead, the fighters exchanged a firm handshake. Hart told Junho that he was great at lifting the barbell and had a great landing on the exam. Junho, a native of Korea, and Russell Hart from Canada decided to be friends. The professional wrestling industry is dominated by macho men. You can say that this is the world of animals, and if you don't make friends with someone, you can get into a fight. In front of Junho stood the heir to a famous family of professional wrestlers, and he is one of those people with whom it is better to make friends. Jun said that he was glad to have the honor of meeting a representative of such a family, and Russell thought that the guy was knowledgeable. Jun introduced Sean to Riesel. Russell Hart asked Sean if he has problems with falling. He replied that yes, and would Hart give him some advice. Hart said that flexibility in the body is important, but what's in your head is more important. You don't need to fall in such a way that it doesn't hurt at all. You just need to change your technique so that it hurts less. He immediately invited Sean to go to the ring and try. Junho watched Hart and Sean train and saw that Sean was doing better. Hart is truly the elite of wrestling and was able to help by simply telling Sean where he was going wrong. Hart exudes pride without pompous arrogance. Despite the fact that Sean had improved his fall, his body was too clumsy. Junho said that there is no need to worry about being slow. Sean is more of a powerhouse. A powerhouse in wrestling is someone who has great physical strength. Sean asked, "Who is Jun himself then?" And he replied that he was a brawler, which means a fighter. Since then, the three of them began to help each other, and little by little Sean, thanks to Riesel, began to receive approval from Paku. Before the next training session, Paku was late as always. When he entered, he immediately began yelling that the fighters were not ready yet. Paku walked in, accompanied by other men, and shouted for everyone to dress like real wrestlers. And he has a surprise prepared for everyone. One of the men turned to Pak and asked why they needed to come for a simple training session. They're too busy for that. Paku replied that he had something to show. Junho looked at the costumes, but they were old and uninteresting. Sean puts on cat ears and Puck sends him out to change because the stripper costume doesn't suit him. The rest of the costumes didn't work out either, and Paku yelled that they had never really watched wrestling on TV. They're all idiots. Russell Hart came out wearing a pink jersey and said that he was the heir of the Hart family and had come to show off his skills. Paku said it wasn't ideal, but it would do. Junho came out wearing a simple black jacket and black jeans and said as he ran his hand through his hair that he didn't have a special concept. He's a Los Angeles native who bought a trailer after high school and traveled all over the country in it. Viewers noted the guy's confidence. He continued that he had seen everything in his life. He broke bones. They shot at him and he realized that for the sake of victory, you can do anything. And those who say that this is bad are just losers who will remain on the sidelines of life. He continued that the most important thing is that he will still become the big boss of this company. Books, fame, power. For this he will become a wrestling star. The audience thought the guy was something. He acts like he's in a movie. The man in the suit said that this is what you need. He is different from everyone else. He told Puck that he was right to bring him here. With this, reforms can be made. He asked where Paku found this diamond. Russell Hart stood in the ring. Junho was approaching the ring. In one leap, he jumped into the ring. In run up to Hart, the referee pushed him aside and said the fight hadn't started yet. The spectators watched with interest what was happening in the ring. The fighters looked at each other aggressively. A month ago, Paku was reading someone's file. Russell came up to him and said that the trick he was practicing was already perfect. Paku chuckled angrily. Russell, no less angrily, reminded him that he was the heir to the Hart family and knew what he was talking about. Paku scratched his head. All the athletes thought Russell was right, but why didn't Paku give him permission? Paku said that he had a lot to do now. Let Hart come later. He called the next fighter and Sean came out to them in an amazing way. Jun couldn't figure out who it was. Sean even had a microphone in his hands. Sean climbed into the ring and told everyone present that he was a cyborg. Paku swore dirty and asked, "In what sense is he a cyborg?" Sean shouted for everyone to look at his muscles, that he would destroy all enemies without pity. That's why he needed these steel muscles. He also shouted that all the other fighters were idiots and stupid. They all have bad bodies and will be defeated. They only want to drink Coke and eat hamburgers. Coach Park, with a can of Coke in his hand, thought he had found another talent. Sean did mic work, microphone work where you force the listeners to look only at you. Sean had a talent for it. His technique literally fascinated everyone, but when Sean took off his cap, he became himself again. Junho told Sean that he was just a fighting machine. He didn't have enough brains, but for the sake of an excellent result, he was ready to plow like a horse. Coach Paku was also very happy that Sean finally got to show himself. Russell also took the microphone and wanted to show off his ability to attract attention. He shouted that he was the heir of the Hart family. Junho suddenly shouted that Hart was just a copycat. Everyone froze. Coach Paku asked if Jun knew what he was saying. Junho reiterated that Russell is just a wannabe. Russell is not unique. After his debut, he was unable to surpass himself and did not develop. It's all because of his Uncle Greg. My uncle's skills were excellent, but does the world need a worse copy of Greg Hart? Junho really wanted to encourage Russell to find his uniqueness, and he turned to the fighters so that they said that they also think so. Sean asked if Junho had gone crazy, but he replied that Russell was simply repeating all his uncle's tricks. Russell shouted that if Jun didn't like something, then let him climb into the ring and they would deal with each other. Junho immediately climbed into the ring and repeated that Russell was just a bad copy of his uncle. Sean tried to stop Junho, but Park told Sean not to interfere. Junho knows what he's doing. In the ring, both guys were yelling at each other. Russell reported that he was the best representative of his family, and Jun laughed about it. He drove Russell into hysterics, and he screamed that these were his tricks, and he was better than Greg Hart. And his goal is to glorify his family. Junho remembered Russell telling him that for the final stage of the test, the challengers would have to fight each other. He laughed and told Russell not to give his dream to someone else, but he would fight with him and teach him life. Russell said Jun could count on it. Just pick a date and see who's who. The show is over. Coach Paku was happy that there was now an excellent ring segment. This means the overall work of one or more players in the ring to add more action. Of course, there is always a script, but Russell was very good in the ring. The coach praised him and said he was a great nephew to his uncle. Paku told everyone that this is how they should work for the public. But after this show, many people began to think that Junho and Russell were on very bad terms. Paku carried both guys in the car and sang songs. They looked in different directions. Junho wondered if Russell was offended by him. He thought it was easy kayfabe. Depiction of competition, rivalry, enmity is genuine and not staged, and athletes adhere to them only in public. Even if Russell didn't understand this, why be offended right away? He asked the coach where they were going. He replied that they were going to the store and having dinner. He said he wanted Coke. Russell turned to him, laughed, and said he wanted it too. They got out of the car near the shopping center. There was an active fight going on in the gateway. Some idiots were beating the guy. Coach Paku was about to run to bring justice, but Junho thought that it was not worth getting involved in a fight. He told Puck that he would call the police, but cries for help were heard from the gateway. The bandits not only beat the guy, they also threatened the woman and her children with a pistol. At that very moment, all the fighters got involved in a fight. Junho picked up his opponent and threw him to the ground. The rest of the bandits decided to find out what was happening. Russell successfully applied a submission hold to the bandit. Bandits with a knife and a pistol rushed to protect their accomplices. On the way, they met Paku, who knocked both the knife and pistol out of their hands. He grabbed their heads. He shouted that they were threatening defenseless people, and for this he would kill them without pity. And he threw the two scoundrels onto the asphalt. Junho and Russell shouted at Park not to kill the bastards. In a few minutes, it was all over. Russell and Paku stood and looked at the bandits. They told Junho that they shouldn't use wrestling techniques on ordinary people, but Jun thought they asked for it. All hooligans can only mock the weak, and when they meet a strong opponent, they themselves turn into weaklings. The woman hugged her husband and warmly thanked the men for their help. Jun saw a badge on the man's chest, where it was written that he was a journalist. He thought that they saved these people selflessly, but couldn't this be a great opportunity in the future? A few days later, Russell and Jun were called to the director's office. Paku and the beaten journalist were already sitting in the director's office. Harley Reese, CEO of GCV, asked what the boys had done. The journalist said his name was Robin Connor and asked if they remembered him. They shook hands and introduced themselves. Robin said that he would definitely write about them, but Harley replied that simply writing was not enough. The organization has something to show and tell about the guys. Harley suggested that the journalist watch these guys in the ring so that the article about wrestling would come out great. Paku was indignant. The guys have not yet learned all the tricks. Robin happily agreed and said that he hoped for an interesting performance. Harley gave 2 hours to prepare for the fight, and Puck thought about it. He seemed confused and asked Jun what his nickname and final move would be. The guy replied that he would simply call himself Jun, and the final movement is a knee strike, and he showed Puck how he was going to do it. Paku said it was too easy. He thought it would be better to hold a northern light bomb, as in the fight against bandits. But it's too dangerous. Paku left, and Jun came to Russell and said that they need to train before the fight. They came up with a great script. Jun and Russell entered the ring. Russell immediately ran towards the enemy. Junho also ran towards Russell. The journalist was sitting next to Paku, and he was very interested. Paku assessed the fight. He thought that if the guys ran at each other, then they wanted to do lock up a technique when two players hold each other's neck and arms and compete to see who is stronger. This is the standard start. But Junho did not grab his opponent by the neck. He simply dodged the running Russell. He grabbed him by the hair and kneed him in the face. Coach Paku's eyes widened in surprise. Russell Hart fell to the floor, and Junho attacked him. He pressed his hand on his opponent's neck, and he began to hold a reception. Paku thought Jun started right away with the final move, Russell pulling his hand towards the rope. He managed to do it and grabbed it tightly. The judge said that rope break, breaking the rope where the opponent must move away if the second fighter is behind the ropes. Junho shouted to Russell that he was already exhausted, and Russell thought that Jun would not calm down. Jun continued to mock and suggested that Russell take a break. Russell understood that this was a show, but he really wanted to hit Jun really hard. Russell Hart comes from a famous family and Kim Junho is a street-level amateur. Paku thought he saw great talent, but now everyone will see it. Great idea. The viewer will love the victory of Lucino from them. The finale has arrived in the battle between two future legends. They grabbed each other by the neck. All their muscles were tense. Paku saw that Russell had an advantage due to his physicality. He broke free of the hold and threw Jun into the ropes. The referee recorded a violation and told the opponents to disperse. Russell began to argue with the judge, and it was his mistake. Jun did not waste time. He ran up and spent dropkick with both feet directly at Russell's head. Dropkick is an attack kick in wrestling. The fighter jumps up and hits the opponent with the soles of both feet. In this case, the fighter turns during the jump, and when his feet hit the opponent, one foot is always higher. Russell fell on his side. At that same second, Jun grabbed him by the face and pressed him to the ropes. Jun used the technique hammering, and Russell almost fell out of the ring. With all the fury he could muster, Junho threw Russell into the ropes, threw an elbow to the body, and captured the enemy in vertical suplex, a technique in which the attacking fighter applies a facelock to the opponent, throws his arm over his shoulder, then lifts the opponent and falls back, throwing the opponent back to the mat. The journalist looked at the fight without stopping and thought, "God, what's going on?" Russell Hart was lying in the ring. He struggled to get up, but Jun hit him with a kick. The audience saw the look on Jun's face that foreshadowed victory. Junho did not finish off the lying Russell. He wanted to pass by, but suddenly Russell grabbed his leg, and he showed a sudden full-strength counterattack. Now Jun was lying on the floor of the ring, and Russell pounced on him like a tiger on a deer. The audience roared with delight. Russell landed a low kick on Jun's leg, and when he fell to his knees, he stepped on his foot with his shoe. At the same time, he punched Jun with all his might in the back of the head. Now the situation was completely under Russell's control. He deliberately kicked Jun in the knee, as this was Jun's final move. Russell grabbed Jun by the hair, and he performed a DDT, any movement in wrestling in which the fighter holds the opponent in a headlock and falls down or back to hit the opponent's head on the mat. But Jun was able to get up and Russell received a strong side blow. Both opponents exchanged kicks, but Jun could not resist. He fell into the ring and Russell grabbed his leg. Jun thought it was still painful. Russell grabbed his opponent's sharpshooter, a grip in which the opponent lies on the mat, and the attacking fighter clasps his legs at the level of the shins. Junho recognized the Hart family's favorite technique. The judge was waiting for Junho to give up, but he grabbed Russell by the ankle. Paku thought that he didn't expect that the guys were so talented, and even he couldn't say who would win. Junho crawled out of Russell's grip, and while he did not understand what was happening, he attacked him with his knee in the face. He knocked him to the floor of the ring and grabbed his opponent's leg. Russell lay motionless and the referee began the count. 1, 2, 3. A few seconds later, the judge announced the winner. It was Jun. The audience rejoiced. The journalist was impressed. Jun entered the locker room. The coach met him there, said that the fight was amazing, and asked if his knee hurt much. Jun replied that it didn't hurt at all and waved his leg. The coach replied that it was a great show, and he asked, "Did Jun also do this on the streets?" Russell came into the locker room and the coach said they were both great. Jun wondered if Russell would start hitting him right in front of the coach, but instead the guys hugged and said it was cool. Paku asked if the guys had been doing this all this time kayfabe. Russell said of course, because he and Jun are friends. They were urgently called by Harley Racy, and they went to the director's office. Harley Racy, current head of the GCV and professional wrestler famous in the 70s. After retiring, he enjoyed his old age training the next generation of wrestlers. He told Jun and Russell that it was a great show. Jun thought that in his previous life, even in his dreams, he could not imagine such a situation. Back then, he was just a loser. Robin approached them and said that he liked everything, but he had doubts. If his children, who after the events in the alley began to admire wrestlers, watch the fight, won't they get any bad feelings? The guys understood that wrestling is associated with hatred and violence among people. Jun replied that in professional wrestling, winning is always good. Today he won, but people remembered Hart and will wait for his victories. There's no denying the sport's dangerous aspects, but that's part of its charm. Jun said that they always proudly say that they are professional wrestlers. After a few days, some of the newcomers dropped out. In the end, 4 people remained: Kim Junho, Russell Hart, 2-meter native of New York, Eddie Morris, and Sean Sim, future star. He had changed the most and was already easily dodging Paku's attacks. Park approached Jun and said that GCV wanted to officially sign a contract with them. Jun did not expect such an offer so quickly, and remembered that in a previous life, the payment was $5,000. I wonder how much it is now. Paku showed him the contract, but his contract did not specify the amount. Paku said that Jun can enter any numbers because the organization wants to take him anyway. Jun immediately began writing the number in words. Paku asked how much he asked for, and the guy said 100 million. Paku snatched the contract from Jun and yelled that the guy was crazy. Jun stated that Paku himself said, "As much as you want." Paku replied that he meant normal numbers. Then Jun decided that it would be 20,000. Paku was indignant that Russell wrote himself only 10,000, but Jun objected that he, not Russell, won the fight. And now he believes in himself, so 20,000 is normal for him. Paku thought that this was the most talented of the newcomers and agreed with the condition that Jun become the world champion. Jun confidently said that he would. Paku waved his hand and told the guy to write 30,000 at once. He was confident that he would soon bring big profits to the organization. Once the contract was signed, Park showed Jun Robin's article about wrestling. The article said that many people know wrestling as a stupid show filled with hatred and danger. In fact, wrestling is the guardian of classical values. Thanks to all the fighters who, with their own strength, show America to the whole world. When Paku left, Jun sat down and could not believe that he would be paid 30,000, although he was still a student. But Harley forced Jun to rewrite the amount, reducing it to 20,000. He muttered at the same time that the youth were completely insolent. 3 months have passed since Junho signed the contract. The guys were surprised by the news that they would be performing on a TV show. Paku said gloomily that they were already sufficiently prepared. Junho thought that they still need to study for 6 months. How come they are called to appear on television? Paku gloomily replied that most likely there was a call to the television from above, and he demanded that the guys not talk too much at the show. Of course, after the last fight with Russell, the performance in the show can be considered as a full-fledged debut. But it's strange that beginners can get into the real ring so quickly. Experienced fighters are called to the show in the WWF. Junho wondered if they needed to come up with new tricks. He felt like he needed to show something unique. The scriptwriters approached them and said that there was very little time. They had to work quickly. They separated the guys and went to their offices. Jun looked longingly at the screenwriter, who had a whole plan in his hands. The screenwriter asked Junho if he was going to come up with a pseudonym. Jun knew he needed a pseudonym. The company has the right to the fighters' pseudonyms. If a fighter decided to use his real name, the company would change the spelling to take over the rights. Jun thought his name was difficult to pronounce and remember. Just what kind of pseudonym should I come up with? The scriptwriter, without waiting for an answer, said that the image of Jun, a street wrestler, was too flat. All the bad guys look the same. It's not interesting to the public. Jun clenched his hands tightly so as not to hit the screenwriter, who had crap on his image, and politely asked which image would suit him. The screenwriter happily said that the image of a thief who would steal a champion's belt would be very suitable. Jun's eyes widened. He said it sounded childish, like a cartoon. The screenwriter said that the grotesque is now in fashion, and Jun thought that he was communicating with a moron. Although in professional wrestling, the fighters and writers have to collaborate with each other constantly because the shows come out every week, it's impossible to work well together. He said that Rock Cold, for example, has a wonderful image. Maybe he should think in this direction. The writer responded that Junho is not Rock Cold at all. Here, Jun could not stand it, and openly called the screenwriter an idiot. Now the screenwriter's eyes widened. Junho approached the scriptwriter and stared at him menacingly. He shouted that he would not allow anyone not to listen to his wishes and make a fool out of him. The screenwriter shouted that the idea was great, and prepared for death. A minute later, Jun calmly walked away from the guy and asked how he liked his game. The writer took a breath and said that in reality, Junho can be intimidating. In the evening, Paku and Jun stood on the roof and Paku asked how everything went. Jun said they came to an agreement. Paku said that they will send more fighters to the show. The ratings must be crazy. Although the GCV was originally a subsidiary of the WWF, it was the one that most often organized the show. Therefore, they are very worried about ratings. Junho asked Park if he wanted to know what they should do to improve ratings. Paku listened and led him to Harley. There, Jun reiterated that they needed competition. He said that everyone loves to watch a competition, not a show with a predetermined ending. Harley asked, how then to determine the champions? Junho replied that it was based on skill. just like they determine the winner in any other sport. The player who scores the most points, as in basketball. The most skilled player on the team, like kayakers. The best defensive player in American football. In professional wrestling, it's popularity. The one who can be most remembered in a short time. A talent that makes people root for him. He continued that on the day of the show, all battles would end in a draw. And the fierce struggle of the athletes towards the end of the game will only increase the value of the championships and the expectations of the audience. Harley asked how many fighters I could take part in the show. The manager replied that there were about 20 people. Harley said there would be 16, including Russell and Jun. The manager didn't understand how to fit the new format into airtime. It is impossible to play out 8 fights in half an hour. But Jun reminded that there is more dark match, warm-up before the show, which is used to warm up the audience. The manager said that time was still short, but Junho replied that he planned to have his match in 3 minutes. Their battle will begin during the interview with Russell, and it will smoothly flow into the ring. The manager said that then there would be even more time, and in the second part, they would nominate the most famous fighters. Then the audience will wait for the next show with interest. Harley noted that thanks to this guy's ideas, the show would sparkle with new colors and told everyone to get to work. When Jun left Harley's office, a man approached him and asked how the conversation went. Jun replied that he was fine, and the man led him to the costume room. He said that he saw Jun's first costume and liked it. He took out jeans and a white t-shirt and advised me to cut the jeans so that the knee strike would look more impressive, although something dark would suit Jun's color, since he plays a bad guy. At this time, girls approached Jun, who wanted to get an autograph from the hero who defeated Hart himself. Junho was confused. He had never given an autograph before, either in his past or in this life. The man asked him what pseudonym Jun had chosen for himself. Jun took the notebook from the girl, signed it and showed it to the man. He looked at the autograph incredulously. It was written there in large letters, Sin or Sin. Jun thought that if everyone had mocked his abilities and skin color in the past, let them know that he was back and ready to take revenge. He is the new Sin. The man thought and drew on a black t-shirt how he sees Jun's pseudonym. Jun really enjoyed designing his costume. Preparing for the show was difficult, but very interesting. In the corridor, Jun was met by a huge man. He asked Jun if he was Sin. Jun nodded silently, looking up. The fighter told Jun to follow him. Sports have their own subordination. Although Jun was an experienced wrestler in the past, he returned in 2002 and is now a newbie. At that time, the elders oppressed the younger ones. Jun remembered this very well. Something like an army. He entered and was immediately showered with ridicule, dressed like a refugee. And the face was strange. The bald man was laughing. The others said that the newcomer was scared like a little princess. They called Jun into the ring. He knew each of them from the past. In the ring, the bearded man suggested starting with chain wrestling, a technique for combining attacking movements and counterattacks. Chain wrestling is the foundation of wrestling, but Jun was in no hurry to attack. The bearded man asked why the guy was not attacking, and Ken replied that he was not a fool to attack an opponent who was twice his size. Then the bearded man rushed to the attack with a roar, and he began to grab the head. Jun realized that he was in a steel vise and was about to die. To Junho's surprise, he survived the grab, and the bearded man said that they would now bounce off the rope. Jun crashed into the ropes and bounced off them. His opponent stood bent over after the throw, and Jun ran at him. He rested his hands on his opponent's broad back, and he jumped over it, doing a somersault. The bearded man did not expect such a turn of events. Someone's hand grabbed the ring rope, and a voice told the bearded man, whose name was Seamus, to get out of the ring. A guy in a Hawaiian shirt climbed into the ring and told Jun that he would now train with him. It was Husky Harrod, height 195, weight 150 kilograms. Jun thought that now he was definitely finished, and Husky said that he would carry out a back throw. But a few minutes later, Husky and Seamus stood drenched in sweat. Junho sat in the ring and asked if anyone else wants to train him. All the old fighters left the hall and promised that they would meet with Jun next time. Jun in turn thought that he had miraculously survived. Experienced fighters talked about Jun. Seamus asked where this one came from. Husky replied that it was clear, from China. Seamus yelled that that's not what he was talking about. If the guy is an amateur, then why is he so good? They agreed to invite the arrogant newcomer to the gym tomorrow. A huge fighter walked past them, and Husky asked him if he was ready for the show. The fighter, whose name was Barbie, replied that he was completely confident in himself. Paku approached the doors of the hall, behind which loud sounds were heard. In the ring, Seamus did a backdrop on Jun, and he fell into the ring with a deafening roar. Barbie and the rest of the fighters watched this. Professional wrestlers always try to avoid injury and fight comfortably. Even after a strong throw or trick, a fighter should not experience severe pain. But Jun wanted to teach the fighters a real lesson. Paku came in at that very moment and said that it was time for everyone to go to lunch. Barbie tried to object, but Paku's iron hand lay on his shoulders, and the coach persistently invited Barbie to lunch. When everyone left the hall, Paku asked Jun how he felt. Jun answered honestly that it was like being in hell. Paku met Jun in the car, and he asked how preparations for the show were going. He replied that in the back seat is what the writers came up with for him. They were impressed by his stunts and theme song. Jun didn't remember any theme song. Paku turned on the tape recorder. The choir sang to some cheerful, exciting rhythm. No one has ever had such a song, thanks to the music manager. Paku said that since Jun's arrival, everyone has been working enthusiastically and is looking forward to the show. Thanks to his idea, there is a high chance that the show will not fail. Saturday night. The percentage of viewers is 0.7. The 273rd episode of the show will take place today. In Junho's past life, the entire show failed due to very low ratings. But now Jun was preparing to enter the ring. Harley yelled at Jun to put on a real show for everyone. Everything was ready for broadcast. 1, 2, 3. Let's start. The host began to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the future superstar of wrestling, Russell Hart, heir to a famous family. The audience greeted Hart enthusiastically. Jun watched Russell being interviewed. The presenter asked Hart how he was feeling. Russell said he would do his best. The presenter asked how he entered the professional ring at such a young age. Russell replied that he was following in the footsteps of his father and uncle. At this time, Junho appeared in front of the cameras and said that this wouldn't work. Why didn't they tell him that there would be an interview? Or can only elite sons count on him? The host, confused, said that Jun's interview was next. Jun approached the girl threateningly and said that he half thought that she didn't care about him. Russell indignantly shouted at Jun to stop being a bully. He stepped forward of the girl and stood in front of Jun, and he demanded that he apologize to the presenter. Jun said, "What will happen if he doesn't apologize?" Russell advised Jun not to test it. Jun laughed and said that there is no need to take everything so hostilely, and he hit Russell between the legs. Russell really didn't like this sneaky blow, and Jun was yelling that such vile people who grew up with a golden spoon in their mouths could only talk nonsense into the microphone. At the same time, he beat Russell. The spectators froze in horror. The leader shouted for them to stop. Parents watching TV at home covered their children's eyes, but they themselves could not tear themselves away from the screen. Russell was lying on the floor and Jun was standing over him. He looked straight into the camera and told the whole world, "You can consider me sin." He continued to say that he doesn't care about their dreams or requests, but all viewers will remember him as a winner. They just have to watch him rise to the very top. There was applause. The presenter laughed along with everyone. Everyone told Jun that the promotion was great. Jun said that he was very worried because it was a live broadcast, but everything seemed to go well. Russell stood up and said that Jun still overdid the blow. He apologized. At this time, an enthusiastic roar from the audience came from the hall. There was a fight between famous wrestlers. They thought that they had just finished their first promo and how the audience would react to them. I wonder if they will like the battle between the golden-haired Major and Sin from the streets, who knows nothing but freedom. It's time to find out. Meanwhile, the fight between the two famous wrestlers ended with a simultaneous knockout and a draw. Commentators said that this is exactly how you should fight for the champion belt. The battle ended early, so Paku said that the exit with Russell would be 5 minutes early. Standing next to Jun was Sheamus, with whom he was supposed to have his first fight. Jun asked what they would do now. Sheamus replied to Jun to follow him quietly, and he warned that if Jun twitched, he would rip his head off. Commentators said that the next fighter is from Ireland. Height is 193. Weight is 120. Sheamus. He receives huge support from the public. Jun thought his promo also gave him some fame. He walked into the ring and thought that this was a gift to him after so many years of suffering. They are actors, athletes. They are the super people of our time. Sheamus's opponent is a native of New York, 6'9" tall and 105-kilogram weight, Sin. The audience whistled and shouted that the idiot should leave. Jun didn't pay attention to this. He knew that after Russell came out, the audience's opinion would change. At the moment, Sheamus loomed over Jun like a rock. The fighters grabbed each other's hands and tried to grab each other's necks. Jun fell into the steel trap of the grip and felt that all his muscles were cramping. Sheamus whispered for the guy to give up, but this was not in the script. Sheamus threw Jun into the ropes and growled that he gave him exactly 5 minutes. Sheamus slammed Cena into the corner. Can the guy get out? Everyone in the room didn't understand what was happening. Paku was afraid that Sheamus would go against the script just for the sake of his pride. The referee tried to get Sheamus away from Jun, but Sheamus continued to throw punches and June was already sitting in the corner and breathing heavily. The audience cheered and shouted the name of the winner. June understood that if Seamus now took all the attention of the audience, then there would be no point in his fight with Russell. He needed to buy time, and he jumped out of the corner and ran around the ring. The referee stood between the fighters, to the great indignation of Seamus, who did not expect such agility from June. Commentators shouted that Sin was a rare coward, and decided to hide behind the judge's back. June shouted at Seamus to do everything according to the script, but Seamus said he would do it as he wanted, and he rushed at Jun. Then June ran out to meet him. Seamus picked up Jun and threw him to the floor of the ring as hard as he could. He grabbed him by the hair. Jun thought desperately that he couldn't give up like this. Seamus said the script was for the newcomer to win, and no one would like that. Jun replied that in wrestling, all fighters win regardless of whether they win or lose. Seamus said that they could do it as written in the script, but the audience wouldn't like it. Then June decided that he would not tolerate this anymore, and hit Seamus in the forehead with his hand. Seamus grabbed his head, and the commentators shouted what a great shot and Cena now has a chance. June landed a knee strike on Seamus's face. Seamus began to fall over, and June thought what was happening. His opponent could not properly take his attack. But this fight could no longer be right. Seamus fell to the floor. June was the first to see the danger Seamus was in. He fell with his neck on the rope, and the inside of the rope was reinforced with an iron middle. And if you fall on it incorrectly without preparation, you can die by breaking your spine. June ran up, hit Seamus, knocking him out of the fall onto the ropes and put his foot between Seamus and the ropes. What a great shot, Cena. Seamus was lying on the floor. He raised his head and realized that he had almost died. Then he focused his gaze and saw Jun's middle finger in front of him. Wow! Now Sin gives the middle finger to Seamus. The dirty game has begun. June said that we must play by the rules. They have rehearsed all the movements, and now every attack can be fatal. He turned to the auditorium and shouted that he was tired of the bastards, who are nothing of themselves, but came to watch the match. He shouted that no one could hold a candle to him, and he was now the new luminary of wrestling. He will be the one to take the championship belt, and they should start respecting him now. Russell Hart's symbol, a pink heart with a lightning bolt, lit up on the screen. The magnificent Russell entered the arena. He threw off his jacket, and he rushed into the ring like a whirlwind. Without stopping, he hit Jun in the head and he began to fall to the floor. The spectators screamed furiously. Backstage, Paku and the others watched the fight. Everyone from the audience to the employees was delighted by Russell's appearance. June responded to Russell with an equally strong blow. Russell furiously swung his fist at his opponent. Since this was their first debut on television, there was no way to show any weakness. June walked under Russell's fist and headbutted him in the face. The commentators were screaming that CN had hit Russell where it hurt. What cruelty! And then Russell received a kick that knocked him onto the ropes and threw him over them. Russell Hart made it out of the ring thanks to a punch from Cena. June jumped over the ropes and began to pursue his opponent, but then came Russell's unexpected counterattack. The fierce battle continued right next to the spectators. Russell at this time thought that June was simply a genius. The fighters continued to move between the rows of spectators. This only made the audience more excited. They are completely focused on what is happening. Paku went to the exit. Harley asked where he was going, and Puck said he needed to check on Seamus. He came out and saw Russell and June, who had left through the third exit in a fight. Paku asked what if the audience saw them resting here. He led them into the room and said that Russell had made a very impressive entrance, and June was confused at first. Paku said that as for Seamus, who just came to them, he has a very bad character. But June said Seamus did a good job for the show. Paku angrily asked Seamus what he was doing in the ring, but June intervened and said that at first it was his fault they missed a couple of punches. But then they went back to the script. Paku said that the fighters could rest and left. Seamus asked why June didn't tell the truth, but June replied that they would still have the opportunity to fight. The main thing is that Seamus was not hurt. The show ended with great success. This was the beginning of the GCV Championships, double knockout of champions. The sudden spectacular appearance of Russell Hart, all this became a topic for discussion. And most of all, they talked about the main bastard of the show, Sin, and about his golden-haired opponent from the Sonata family. The percentage of viewers rose to 1%. Newspapers, television, and the internet were talking only about this pair of fighters. Paku told Harley that they haven't had something like this for a long time, and now the guys will have to sign a contract with television. June and Sean were stretching after training. Sean had problems with flexibility and needed to improve it. There was a knock on the door of the hall. June opened it and saw Seamus, who called him Sin and offered to go talk. Paku and the screenwriter were looking for June. Sean said that June left with Seamus. Paku went looking for these idiots in a rage. Seamus stood in front of June in the hallway. He thanked him that the guy saved him from imminent death. Seamus said that if June needed any help, he could count on him. June did not expect such an act from Seamus. He was confused and thanked him in return. Then Paku ran up to them at full speed, expecting to see Jun's body on the floor. He grabbed Seamus by the shirt, pinned him to the wall, and told him to get down to business. He told Jun to follow him. We needed to talk about the contract. In his office, he was met by a screenwriter who had recently displeased Jun. He asked if Jun had any ideas for his stage persona. Jun was indignant and said that no one discusses the script with the fighter. If something goes wrong, he will have to answer. The professional life of a wrestler depends on the script. If one fighter wants to influence the scenario, then the other fighters will be outraged. Who would want their opponent to choose who will be the winner and loser? Paku said that the writer wants to hear Jun's ideas because the past show was such a hit. Then Jun said that he thought Barbie should win this championship. The screenwriter said that Barbie is a bad boy, and this will not be interesting to the audience. Jun objected that Barbie's image needed to be completely changed. For example, he will change a lot in order to become a champion. The screenwriter said that the audience will like the one who changes himself to win, and not the one who wins for no reason. In addition, Jun said that he believes that he and Russell need to lose in the semi-finals. Then Husky and Barbie can reach the finals. In the rocking room, the athletes, as always, exchanged jokes and stories. Jun watched Husky and thought that he didn't exactly have the body of a winner. He needs to change before the fights. He approached Seamus and asked him to pair him with the Huskies in practice. Husky heard his name and approached the guys. Seamus said Jun wanted to train with him. Husky put his hand on Jun's shoulder and asked if he really looked so fearless. Jun replied that he felt like he could learn a lot from Husky. They stood in the ring, and Jun recalled that Husky tried to grow professionally before retiring. After training, they sat at the bar. Husky, surrounded by fans, told jokes. Jun thought that almost all the GCV fighters were gathered here, but in the past only Husky and he were on the WWF lists. He asked Husky how long he had been wrestling in the GCV. Husky replied that about 5 years. Jun said it was time for the Huskies to move to the gold lineup, but Husky replied that he was tired of wrestling. This job just pays well. This came as a surprise to Junho. Husky showed a photo of Bigfoot's footprint and said that he would like to look for it, rather than fight in the ring. Jun thought that Husky had an interesting hobby. He asked why Husky decided to take up wrestling in the first place, and he replied that he was a third-generation wrestler. The famous Blackjack Morgan, who's shown in the 70s, is the grandfather of Husky, and Mike Rwanda, who was a star in the 90s, is his father. Jun thought that Husky would be useful for him and Russell, and decided to make Husky believe in himself in the ring at the next competition. The next show had a much larger audience. The fight between Jun and Seamus was short-lived. Cien defeats Seamus and moves on. Junho thought that in his previous life, no one had even heard of him. But now he stands at the top, and he really likes it. After the fight, Jun met Seamus, thanked him for a great fight and bowed, as is customary in Korea. Seamus also said that the fight was great, and sincerely smiled at Jun. After the competition, Dune and Husky talked about how Husky could change his image. Husky didn't understand why he needed this. Jun argued that it would be very interesting. Husky is very artistic. Husky said he wanted an eagle to appear on the screen for his presentation, followed by a lantern and a long beard. Jun said that it would be very good, and Husky thought about it, and he suggested that Jun immediately go to the video room and work on his image. When they showed what they had done to the fighters and workers, everyone said it was very cool. Husky was absolutely delighted. Paku said that if you change your concept so quickly, the public might not like it. Smooth changes are needed. But he liked the idea, and went to Harley to approve it, and then they will film a new promo with Husky. Harley made a speech to the fighters that the quarterfinals would be divided into 2 matches. The first is between Barbie and Moose. The second is between Tika and Husky. Next are fights between girls and teams. And at the end, the fight between Cena and Russell. GCV, 274th match. Jun yells into the microphone that everyone is looking forward to the fights, and even those who don't have a girlfriend can feel like winners here. The audience began to make noise, and Jun shouted that he was wrong, that there were only losers here who had never had a girlfriend. The spectators shouted that he was a scumbag, and he was better off dead. Jun continued that his words also apply to Russell Hart, who always sat under his mother's skirt in the luxurious estate. This is a funny opponent for Cena. The audience was shocked by such impudence. Jun yelled that no dumb-headed blonde could stop him from winning, and he could defeat everyone who stood in his way. The Russell Hart logo lit up on the screen, and he entered the ring with a very gloomy expression on his face. He said that Sin can only wag his tongue, but in reality he is nothing of himself. Sin said, how did Russell decide to come out to him? Russell took off his jacket and declared that it's time to show the stupid mongrel who's boss, for the sake of all other people. They stared at each other, and Sin immediately called Russell bad names. The battle has begun. The fighters openly hated each other, but they had not yet begun when a voice was heard from outside the ring, so that the guys would not get angry and quarrel. The fighters' eyes stared at the speaker in surprise. Husky came up to them and said that arguing about the winner was pointless, because it is he, the Huskies, who will make it to the semifinals, and they will lose. Both Russell and Sin simultaneously shouted that they didn't know this fat man. Husky climbed into the ring and said that he did not know which circus of freaks these two had escaped from, but here was GCV, a decent organization. He continued that this was no place for dumb guys and their tricks. Before preparing for the match, Harley repeated that when Husky appears, Russell should be calm, but June should immediately go on the attack. This will help him promote his image and influence the image of the Huskies. Everything went according to plan. The spectators shouted that these two guys should kill the fat old fool. The reaction was even stronger than expected. Sin told Russell that he would deal with him next week, but now he needs to beat this fool. Russell said he wouldn't waste his time on someone like that, even if Sin sorted it out. Commentators shouted that they did not understand what was happening. Russell leaves the ring. Husky ruined all the tension and interesting fight. June led Russell out of the hall and walked towards the ring as fast as he could. Husky stood under the spotlights and did not notice anything. June jumped over the ropes in one leap. Husky still stood with his back to him. Sin immediately attacked Husky and he fell to the floor. It was exciting but not enough. Sin grabbed his opponent by the hair, and he quietly asked, "How about bleeding a little? This will look realistic and will help their images." Husky agreed, and June opened a bottle of artificial blood. This was not in the script. The entire room was chanting Cena's name for the one-sided attack, but did the enemy really start bleeding? Harley and Puck's eyes widened. This was not in the script. The referees pushed Cena away. This has already gone too far. The audience is not happy. Cena is pushed out of the ring. Husky lies in a pool of blood. He is carried out on a stretcher. Harley sternly asked June what the hell happened. June replied that it was only his fault. He said that the audience had a very negative reaction to Husky, and it was necessary to somehow change their attitude towards him. Harley yelled that even if that was the case, then June was a complete idiot. They all thought that Husky was dead. Where did this bastard learn to do this? The fighters stood up for June and said that everything went well. You could directly hear how the ratings increased. Harley yelled that he was paying them money to be on his side. June thought that he had certainly gone too far with the amount of artificial blood. Who knew that such a puddle would flow? At this time, a alive and healthy Husky entered them, and everyone began to discuss the fight. Many said that they were scared and as if they were watching a horror movie. Husky approached Jun and he apologized, but he said that thanks to June's idea, it turned out to be a great show and this is his merit. 275th issue of GCV. Hard applies sharpshooter, a painful technique in which the fighter lifts the opponent's legs, crosses them around his own leg, turns and rolls the opponent over. The battle has already dragged on for 15 minutes and continues to be interesting. June screams in pain. Sin's hand stretched out in a plea for help. Still, he could not withstand such a powerful attack, but June suddenly grabs Russell's ankle. Russell tries to finish the move, but Sin managed to escape from a losing situation, and he performed his final move, a knee strike. Russell's heart flies backwards, and he falls into June's grip, from which he can no longer escape. The referee raises the winner's hand, Cena. The audience rejoices. June notes that the reaction of the audience is excellent, and begins to yell at everyone to shut up. He is the best of the best and will always win, but he knows that today is not about him at all. Suddenly the overhead light went out. A huge figure rises from a rocking chair with a lantern in his hands. A bearded man lights his way with a lantern, and says that he can't even believe that this guy came from the street. This moment riveted all the spectators' eyes to the ring. The fighter continues that the guy in the ring is not good enough anyway. June thinks Husky has made a wonderful transformation. He gave the impression of being a monster in the flesh and was a worthy opponent. Husky said he would show Cena how to fight. Broadcast? Hello, America. Today we'll talk about wrestling. Something incredible happened in the world of wrestling. Even stars of the first magnitude flew out of the ring in a matter of seconds. Paku asked in surprise how they knew everything. Seamus replied that many watched the show. The host continues that it is very interesting that the shows are held in the form of competitions. The preparation is very serious, and many people talk about beginners. Everyone is talking about a fighter called Sin. Who is he? He is very different from ordinary amateurs. He suddenly appeared and immediately became Russell Hart's rival. Now he is a participant in major competitions as a villain. But besides Sin, there is another participant that everyone is discussing. This is Brooke White. All the fighters who listened to the broadcast looked at the Husky in amazement. He's amazing. His nickname is Husky Hart, His performance was mesmerizing. June applauded along with all the Huskies and thought that in his past life he did not know what fame was. And now he is the center of the GCV, and many want to fight him. The program continued, and the presenter said that the GCV had not had a positive image of a fighter for a long time, and now Russell Hart embodies this image. Jun thought that unfortunately people don't go crazy for goodies. Wrestling News was a popular radio show that aired in the 80s. Each of their broadcasts caused a huge reaction and controversy in society. Due to the increased number of viewers and listeners, the company returned the news to the airwaves. And thanks to this, interest in wrestling appeared in other media. Paku tried to teach all the fighters impressive and safe tricks. Harley was busy with paperwork. Jun thought he should make an even more interesting show to thank the audience for their interest in wrestling, and then he will earn even more. He came to the ring and said that everyone remembers the show last week. The idiots who saw the updated player thought, how did this happen to him? This is understandable. The audience has a brain the size of a nut. The spectators were speechless from such impudence. June continued that he would definitely win the semifinals, and Husky would cry and return to his old image of a stupid old fat guy. The audience roared for the scoundrel to shut up and disappear. Today he doesn't even have a fight. Why did he get out? Jun thought everything was going great. All attention was on him. He yelled even louder that they would see each other next week, and told Husky that he would definitely kick his ass. The light went out again. A giant husky silhouette appeared behind Jun. The spectators froze in horror. June turned around to see what was behind him. Husky raised his fist over Jun's head, and a moment later he was already lying on the floor of the ring, and he screamed very loudly in pain. The husky hovered over the lying June like a block of stone, and with his huge fists like a jackhammer, he began to strike the guy's body. June covered himself with his hands from the striking blows. Husky grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him to his feet, and held a reception headbutt, a head strike in which the forehead is used as the impact zone. June fell out of the ring without signs of life. Husky took the microphone and said that he was asking for a few minutes of silence. He asked, "Brothers and sisters, do you mind my intervention?" The audience was delighted. Everyone froze. Husky continued to talk about how next week he would show this guy what bad behavior was like. Although it's a pity to even waste energy on him, because he is sure that his dear viewers, brothers and sisters, will always be on his side. June sat in the locker room with ice on his head. Husky went a little overboard. His colleagues praised him. The public reaction was wonderful. Husky also thought that everything went well. Suddenly he fell silent in amazement. In the foyer he saw his father. For Husky, his father was always a man who laughed at his dreams and imposed his principles. As a child, my father burned all the books about mythical creatures. And despite the fact that Husky couldn't stand his dad, he became a wrestler at his request. Paku told Jun that Husky's failures in wrestling were due to his father. They hoped that the meeting between father and son would go well. And indeed, the father put his hand on Husky's shoulder with a smile. Children always want to be recognized by their parents. June remembered that his father simply kicked him out of the house. He changed the subject and asked Puck why he chose Husky. Paku replied that he has abilities and a desire that he hides. 2 weeks later, June lost to the Huskies in the semi-finals, just as it was written in the script. And Husky, thanks to the image that June came up with for him, became a champion. Thanks to the well-developed images of the fighters, the quality of the show and viewership began to grow. Wrestling News reported that everyone expected to see Russell Hart in the semi-finals, but Sin reached the semi-finals. The host said that he was rooting for Sin, but the host countered that the show wouldn't have gained as much popularity then. Many people don't like Cena because of his vile image. Besides, if a newcomer wins the championship, it will be somehow unfair. The presenters continued to say that the guy has a well-thought-out image of a villain. Some people are attracted to this. They say it's these bad guys that bring back the true spirit of wrestling. They say about Russell that his image is not sufficiently developed, and he can't boast of anything other than his last name. The hosts expressed hope that in future shows, Hart's image will become more clear, and maybe he will become as popular as his uncle Greg Hart, or he will remain a bad copy of famous relatives. In any case, the hosts were very interested in the battle between Russell and Sin. On the new show, Jun insulted the audience as usual. He asked them if they knew Greg Hart, a fighter who won 7 championships. Despite the fact that he did not bring anything new to wrestling, he is called a pioneer. Greg Assassin Hart, June respected him very much, but his image required rudeness. June happily shouted from the stage that Greg was now just an old man who had retired to babysit his stupid nephew. Paku's eyes widened. He thought that this was too much and there was no such impudence in the script. And Harley began to call Greg. The crowd screamed for Sin to get out of the ring. June thought that the warming up of the audience was great and shouted that he was telling the truth, and everyone knew it. There was a loud voice telling Jun to shut up. All spectators turned towards the speaker. Russell walked into the ring and said that he could take any insults in his direction. But no one dares talk about his relatives like that. Did June tell Russell to get in the ring, or is he afraid? Screaming that he was sure to break the insolent man's legs, Russell jumped into the ring. June greeted him with a disgusting face. The radio hosts were delighted with Russell's promise to break Cena's legs. All the spectators had a similar reaction. Ticket sales for the upcoming fight increased several times. GCV continued the practice of increasing sales and the percentage of views. The organization has released t-shirts for the upcoming match. Harley worked things out with Greg Hart, and he was even going to come to the show. Paku said the t-shirts would cost $55 in the store and $44 online. June asked why the internet is so cheap, and Paku replied that no one uses it. June remembered that it is only 2002. For every t-shirt sale, June will receive 60 cents. In addition, Park said that Jun needs to star in a commercial. Before the match, Jun was interviewed. The presenter asked how his preparation for the fight went. June said that he was too busy right now to chat. The presenter asked what he was doing, and he opened his vest and showed off his t-shirt. He told me how soft it was and how it was made of cotton. The presenter asked, "Is he advertising a t-shirt now?" June said yes. The girl wished him a good match and left. Russell came in and said they had to do a great job to make sure all of Jun's t-shirts were sold out. The weekly GCV show has begun. Finally, the last battle. The Canadian fighter is out first. Russell Hart is 1 meter 85 centimeters tall and weighs 100 kilograms. And his opponent, a native of Brooklyn, New York. Height is 1 meter 90 centimeters. Weight is 105 kilograms. Sin. June noticed out of the corner of his eye that many of the spectators were wearing his t-shirts. He shouted to Russell that the t-shirt was about him. Russell replied that he did not pay attention to such stupidity. June raised his knee higher and asked what Russell promised to do with his legs. Does he really want June's knee to kiss his pretty face? The referee announced the start of the fight and Russell rushed to the attack. He grabbed Jun's shirt, and in an instant he tore her to shreds. June swung his fist in rage and hit Russell with a straight right. But Russell ducked and dodged the blow. He slid behind Jun, and he attacked him from behind with a sharp and precise blow. Jun fell to the floor from such a strong push. Sin can't even stand up after being hit unexpectedly. Russell walks right up to him. He's really going to break his knee. Russell hits the knee. Looks like he's done a lot of damage. Immediately grabs Cena and throws him away Dominator, which consists of the attacking fighter facing a bent opponent, applying a waist lock, lifting the opponent so that he is lying across the fighter face up and throwing him to the floor. June in the ring thinks that after all it hurts, and Russell finishes off Cena. Now he applies a headlock around his head. Cena is really unlucky today. The audience cannot take their eyes off what is happening. June realizes that now is the time to start. With his free hand, he punches Russell in the face. Russell bounces away from Jun. The commentators shout that this is against the rules, and the referee missed it. Does Sin really have a chance for revenge? But he immediately loses his balance. Russell's attack actually worked. Sin is still trying to endure the pain and stand up, but he is caught by a direct blow from Russell. Sin falls to the floor of the ring, and Russell makes the final move to prove his victory. Sharpshooter. Usually Sin gets out of such grabs pretty quickly, but not today. He is too exhausted to continue fighting. He has no choice but to give up. Sin gives up. The match is over. Russell wins. Today's match ends with a clear victory of good over evil. Russell Hart champion. June looks at him and thinks that this is an unexpected turn. The wrestling news reporter never thought Cena's broken knee would cause him so much emotion. Russell certainly has talent worthy of his uncle, but what is more admirable is his ability to get a crowd so excited. Immediately after the match, Jun burst through the door screaming that he needed a rematch. Harley, who was calmly watering the flowers, jerked from such a scream. June continued to yell that he needed a rematch with Russell. This time he would deal with him. A conversation was broadcast into the hall, and the audience heard Harley asking why Jun needed another battle, because he had already defeated Russell. And then he agrees, yielding to Sin's pressure. June yelled that if necessary, he would wear a stupid suit like Russell's. Thus the second match between Russell and Cena was announced. The second round ended in a draw. The next match was scheduled, but it will be broadcast on a paid channel. A week earlier on the GCV promo about the Thunder Ring, Russell stands in the ring in his stage costume. The audience laughs at him, and June realizes it's his fault for calling Russell's costume stupid. Russell's character, which has been worked on for so long, may fail. Harley tries to rectify the situation and shouts for the commercial to come on immediately. June says she will try to make things right. He runs onto the stage and asks that when Russell starts talking again, they turn on the music. Russell will now continue. Sin saved the day. Turn on the music. Russell begins to speak again, but is interrupted by laughter. He turns around to see who's behind him. June goes to him and says into the microphone, Did the laughter of those around him make poor Russell sad? The kid was amazed that the loving audience turned away from him. Russell did not play along with Jun, but stood in a daze. Jun continued that it was he, not Russell, who won all the hearts of the audience. Of course, Jun knew he didn't win over the audience, but he went on to say that Russell's costume was amateurish and stupid. The audience became interested. Russell finally came to life and said that his costume was not just any costume. Amateurs don't dress like that. Hart growled, tearing off his jacket, that this suit was made for fighting. This is a symbol of fighting spirit. Russell yelled that amateurs wear jeans, just like Sin. And if he is very worried about his knees, then he should wear knee pads. And if Sin doesn't care about his knees, then let him come up here and prove that he's not a coward. Jun turned and walked away from the ring. Russell shouted after him that he was a coward and was running away to get his knee pads. When Jun entered the hall, he sat down on the step, exhausted. He barely coped with the situation. Everyone greeted him and said great job. Harley and Paku thanked him and said that everything would work out now. Jun really tried his best, and Russell was able to get all the attention of the audience. Paku sat gloomily and said that they did not expect such a turn of events. Russell said he was very sorry, but Paku said they should be the ones apologizing to him. There was no point in making a fool out of Russell. One should have prepared for this in advance. It's very good that Sim was able to cover for everyone at the very last moment. It became clear that Russell received all the ovations because the audience wanted to see him fight against the main villain, Jun. Russell himself was not recognized by the public in any way. Paku said that in the future, they will act according to the script, and they need to stop insulting each other. Jun asked Paku if he could use him in the match, hard-hitting a technique when a wrestler immediately starts with strong blows, without thinking about the opponent's abilities. And so much so that blood starts flowing? Paku advised him to slow down. A professional wrestler never hits at full strength. This is not boxing. Usually fighters get hit and go down a lot, but if it goes too far it can end badly. But when the situation calls for it, a fighter must give his all. Sin attacked Russell very fiercely. The audience thought they were actually fighting each other. Is this really hard-hitting? Can beginners do this? Russell grabbed Cena's arm and started the throw. Sin hit the ring post as hard as he could. Blood flowed from the cut forehead. Russell did not allow Sin to come to his senses and attacked him from the center of the ring. Sin turned and parried Russell's attack with a powerful blow. He caught Russell in a grip and was about to throw. Straining all his strength, the Sun began to fall backward along with Russell. He performed the procedure. German suplex, a throw, which is performed while falling, with the help of the attacker bending his body back. A complex technique with a large amplitude of flight and a fall back with the opponent. Russell turned over in the air and fell to his knees in the ring. Jun also lay exhausted. Russell began to get up with difficulty, but he didn't have time, because Jun got there earlier and attacked Russell's soccer kick, a blow to an opponent who is kneeling or rising from the floor, most often in the face. Russell, covered in blood, could not get up. Both opponents exchanged hateful glances, and how two bulldozers rushed towards each other. The spectators screamed with delight. Russell and Cin met in the middle of the ring to the roar of the audience. Russell lands a straight right, but Sin ducks. But Russell was able to grab his neck with his left hand. Admission DDT, a move in which the fighter holds the opponent in a front face lock and falls backward to drive the opponent's head into the floor. This is exactly how Russell dumped Cena. The crowd screamed for Sin to get up and finish the fight. A bloodied Russell stood over the prone Sin, who could not get up. Some spectators supported Cena, others supported Russell. Rast began to perform his final movement, sharpshooter. The commentators shouted that it was the last minute of the match. Will Sin be able to free himself, or will he give Russell the victory? Is this the end of such a magnificent fight? The judge leaned over Sin. Sin's hand suddenly grabbed the referee's shirt, and Shing threw the man into Russell's back. The villain doesn't care about moral issues. The audience can't believe their eyes. Sin takes Russell down. A foul by Cena ended the match. It was low. The arena fills with disapproving whistles, but Sin doesn't care. Ultimately, the match ended in a draw. The nurse covered Jun's forehead with a plaster. She said there were no major injuries except for a few cuts. Russell, with the same bandage on his forehead and ice on his head, asked if Jun wanted to eat, because his stomach was growling so loudly that everyone in the audience could hear it. Jun said he suffered greatly from Russell's blows. Russell gave him some ice for Jun to put on his shoulder. They sat in the first aid station and discussed the match. Jun said the crowd was on Russell's side. The roar of the audience could be heard from the hall, shouting their names. Paku appeared at the door and told the guys to quickly get ready. We need to finish what they started. Both fighters returned to the ring, and Russell began speaking. He said that since childhood, the concept of a bad person did not exist for him. He considered all people good, but this bastard, he pointed at Sin, is an exception. This term was created especially for him. He asked Sin how dare he knock him over with a dirty trick. The goat? Sin replied that he had no other choice. Russell responded that Sin realized he was playing around and couldn't think of anything better to do than use bad tactics. He continued that, one way or another, this match must be completed. The audience froze at Russell's words. His acting skills have grown. Sin replied that he was not a fan of this idea, but so be it, he agreed. They decided that the match would be on the next broadcast. Russell told Sin not to even think about insulting him or his family. Not many people noticed, but the atmosphere between Sin and Russell managed to change. Their mutual respect grew with each new fight. Cyn committed a lot of fouls, although this is a common occurrence in the world of professional wrestling, but the audience, who noticed something strange in the atmosphere, sensed a change in the attitude of the fighters towards each other, just as the writers intended. After the fight between Cena and Russell on stage, the news about the new fight was the perfect final insert. Physical and acting training, promo shooting, general meetings, script reading, and much more. Several weeks have passed filled with this. June and Russell were walking down the street, where all these efforts will come true. The Atlanta Stadium. Jun thought he was here in a past life, in minor roles. Now he had an opportunity he could never have dreamed of. The main role now belongs to him. He invited Russell to come to the stadium. The inside of the stadium looked even more impressive. June said that this is the right place for the main WWF show. Russell was silent. He was clearly nervous. June said that Russell is the #1 wrestler, and he shouldn't be nervous. But Russell replied that he was thinking about whether they should follow the ending that was written in the script. Jun replied that the audience wanted to see it. The ending of this match will be different from those that have happened before. From the villain he once was, Sin will turn into a hero. Promos of the fighters were broadcast on the screen. Wrestler Barbie, who changed his pseudonym to Bobby, tried to turn the truck over and succeeded. All his muscles were tense. Bobby Ashley was confident that he would become a champion. Husky approached him in his new stage image. All this was broadcast on the screen and people could not believe that Bobby really did it. The heir to a great family, Russell appeared on the screen with angel wings, and Sin is surrounded by hellfire. Harley entered the hall and said that he once heard from people that wrestlers are cowards who play dirty by backstabbing. They are beasts who use their powers to take down their opponents if their tricks stop working. He continued that, of course, he did the same, like many others. But it's still much better here, because a person appeared who showed how you can act freely and improve the show's programs. He continued that when the newcomers enter the ring, let them not forget these moments. When they influence the history of wrestling with their talent, the show is starting, let's go. Commentator's voice, greetings fans of professional wrestling. Atlanta Sports Stadium is here. People from all over America came here to see today's GCV match. Reporters ask people which fighters they came to support. Russell, the woman answers. All the main fighters are ready to sign autographs. Husky told Sin that he shouldn't stick to his stage persona when signing autographs. There will be children here. The hall worker shouts to let the spectators in. To Sin's surprise, there was quite a queue lined up to see him. A guy approached him and said he had a website about wrestling. He said that people who only watch Japanese wrestling only started watching WWF because of Cena. He is now a superstar who can revive American wrestling. After that, even more people came for autographs. One of the spectators told him that he would never be able to beat Russell Hart. Sin replied that this would still have to be looked at. The last to approach Sin was a family with a child. They were Koreans. Sin asked the boy his name and he answered Ned Kim. Jun said that he is also Kim, his name is Kim Junho, and he gave the boy an autograph in Korean, after which they took a group photo with the boy. The GCV match starts at Atlanta Stadium. The report is conducted by famous commentators, Rick Ross and Malibu King. Everyone is looking forward to the start of the match. There are 9,842 spectators in the hall. Such numbers of spectators do not happen even at the main shows. Commentators say they have never felt such an atmosphere before. They are confident that the wrestlers will put on an amazing show. They offer to look at pairs of opponents on the screen. Suddenly the light goes out. Problems with the screen. The voice of Husky, who has changed his pseudonym to Crushed White, is heard. He says everyone is waiting now. He entered the arena with a lantern and continued to say that everyone wants the championship belt, which is his for now. But he is not like everyone else who is just talking. It only shows what is worthwhile. And he turned to Bobby, inviting him to come and pick up the champion belt if he didn't chicken out. The show has begun. A beast with bronze skin came out. Bobby, weighing 130 kilograms, was like a hero from a legend. In the ring, the one who wants to win and the one who wants to defend his title. This is a fight between two giants for the championship title. White hits the ropes, exhausted. Bobby puts White's head in a headlock, lifts him up into a delayed vertical suplex, where the attacking fighter holds the opponent in an inverted position at the top of the arc for several seconds and falls back, sending the opponent to the floor. A devastated White loses. It looks like his last match was just luck. Bobby doesn't let White come to his senses and picks him up. Looks like he's about to throw it over his shoulder. It looks like the match is nearing its end. White was completely exhausted. Suddenly some strange sounds are heard in the hall, and the lights go out again. When the lights come on, 2 fighters wearing ram masks appear in the arena. White attacks the confused Bobby. Bobby barely manages to create a block. Masked fighters attack Bobby. A devastated White and 2 strangers attack Bobby. Commentators are screaming that this is against the rules and why go that far. June watches what is happening with interest. A beaten Bobby sits in the corner, and White has formed his team. Now White appears to be a complete bastard. But the group has already been created. The audience is outraged. The first match is completely destroyed. White proudly leaves, accompanied by his team. The next 3 matches went without complications. It's time for the main show that everyone has been waiting for. Sin entered the ring to the roar of the audience. On the other side was Russell Hart. His face expressed complete confidence in victory. Jun thought that he worked for weeks and made the show exciting for the audience who were waiting for it. Now there is no need for words. Both opponents looked at each other threateningly. Sin immediately grabbed Russell's arm and applied a submission hold. He continued to hold his opponent's hand, lifted him up and gave him acceleration with a sharp right blow to the jaw. Russell was thrown far away from Cena. He doubled over in pain. Sin did not give his opponent time to recover and attacked again with a kick to the head. Russell lost his bearings for a second, and Sin continued his attack, grabbing Russell, and he threw him into the ring with all his might. As Russell lay down, Sin whispered that he was following the plan well. He climbed the ropes to make a dive onto Russell, who was trying to get to his feet. While Sin was still in the air, Russell suddenly attacked. He caught Cena flying by the neck. He pulled it down so that Sin slammed his head into the floor with all his might. Now Sin lay motionless and Russell stood over him. Sin started to get up, but Russell didn't give him that chance and hit him with an elbow to the back of the head. He grabbed Sin's leg, and he began to try to carry out a coup. Sin managed to free his leg and escape the hold. There is a fierce battle going on. The referee monitors the condition of both fighters. Slowly, the referee tells Sin that he was told that Sin should prepare for a big blow. The judge says that Sin should get ready, and he will tell Russell about the plan. Russell understands everything and is ready to act. The fighters again clasped hands in the center of the ring. Sin forcefully pushed Russell away from him. He went for a knee strike on Russell, but Russell was able to slip behind Cena and grabbed him by the ankle while jumping. Sin fell to the floor of the ring with all his might. The walls of the stadium shook from such a blow. Russell instantly took control of Cena's leg and began his final move. Sin tried to stop his opponent with his hand, but Russell blocked his hand. Then the lights went out again, and Sin told Russell that he could let him go. The stadium froze. In the darkness, Sean called out to Sean and said that everything was ready. The same masked men ran into the ring, and when the lights came back on, the commentator couldn't find the right words to describe what was happening in the ring. It seemed that Team White, who had interrupted the first match, reappeared in the ring and began beating both Cena and Russell. The judge, in a rage, grabbed the masked attacker by the shoulder and shouted that this could not be done. He grabbed the bully and led him out of the ring, but defeated White jumped into the ring and knocked out the referee. His comrades continued to beat Russell and Sin, who lay motionless. With a strong blow, one of the attackers threw Cena over the ring ropes. Sin stood up and looked at the 2 bullies who were standing in the ring. Sin coughed and walked towards the exit. White was triumphant in the arena. The spectators shouted for him to return immediately. He heard someone in the hall shout loudly that Sin should help Russell, who was alone with the bullies. Sin stopped. This was the ending they accepted. White suddenly appears as the villain, and a change of roles, a scenario where 2 enemies recognize each other and fight against a larger enemy. The beginning was when Sin saved Russell from defeat. At first, Sin needed to look confused. Boy Kim shouted to the whole room that Russell should not be left in danger. Sin approached the boy's father and asked if he would mind if Sin borrowed his chair. The man immediately agreed. Sin took the chair and told the boy to never do what Sin would do now. Winked at the boy. All this time, while Sin ran away from the ring, Russell took the blows on himself. No one could stop the 3 hooligans. One of the strangers again delivered a strong blow to Russell's head. White ran up to the prone Russell and began kicking him. He pushes Russell into the corner of the ring, and she kicks him in the chest with all her might. Someone from behind called out to the masked man and tapped him on the shoulder. Bully turned around and was hit hard with a chair by Cena. The man bent over and grabbed his head from the blow. The next blow knocked him to the floor. The second masked bully rushed at Cena, but he met him with a chair to the stomach. Having dealt with the 2 hooligans, Sin went to White, who tried to escape. He jumped the ropes and ended up outside the ring. Sin handed Russell a chair. The hall roared joyfully. Yes. In one corner of the ring, Russell beat a bully with a chair. In the other, Sin taught the guy good manners with his fists. White watched from behind the ring. The guys threw the hooligans out of the ring together. They stood side by side and looked at White, who realized that his business was bad and grabbed his head. The guys looked at him and realized that everything had worked out. Reporters were discussing the show and saying that wrestling had become very interesting. White became the villain and finally shaped his role. And Sin and Russell became a team after the battle. It looks like the two of them will form their own team, a common practice to boost the popularity of newcomers. Perhaps on tomorrow's show, Sin and Russell will team up. Paku was very pleased with this report. Jun said that now they will do the complete opposite. Next day of the weekly GCV broadcast. Today's report is about the physical strength of the wrestlers on the show. White says everyone should take his side. They will get rid of everyone who stands in his way, and he will become the king of the ring. His team takes off their masks. Bobby comes into the ring and shouts that the bastard stole his championship belt. White mockingly says that he is ready to listen to the poor boy. Bobby yells that White did what he hates most. He appropriated someone else's property, and this is wrong. If you are a real wrestler, then you have to fight according to the rules. Bobby beat anyone he didn't like, but he did it honestly, so he pretended to be innocently offended. The spectators looked at the ring with interest. White raised his belt and motioned for Bobby to rise and begin the battle. Bobby said he's not alone now. There are two other guys who really want to fight White. He called Cena and Russell to come out. No one came out and White laughed. At this time, with loud screams, "Die at last," Sin and Russell rolled into the arena. They fought with each other. Russell took Cena to the floor and started punching him. Bobby tried to attract the guy's attention to him. In the ring, White was dying of laughter, and Bobby did not understand how this could be. He shouted to the guys who were ready to tear each other apart. "What are they doing?" Bobby pulled the fighting guys apart. Sin threatened Russell that he would kill him. Bobby shouted that the guys promised him that they would beat White together. Sin was yelling that he didn't need anyone to beat White. They left the stage, the match was interrupted, and the scandal continued behind the scenes. Russell yelled what Sin said about not wanting to deal with someone as low level as Russell. All this was broadcast on the screen in the hall. After the broadcast ended, the guys praised Bobby's acting skills. He had such a confused face that everyone believed him. Harley came into the room and said that today the organization would arrange a match with the teams. Russell and Sin were against it, but Harley said that's what audiences want. Commentators said that the date for the match between Cena, Russell, Bobby, and White will be announced later. But now it will be a battle between White's team and the Kings of Lucha, a Mexican style of professional wrestling. The Lucha Kings walked into the arena and promised Team White that they would be gentle in the ring. The Lucha Kings, even with 10 years of experience, were not in the top. But Andrade and Kalisto were very talented wrestlers. June ran up to Sean and Eddie, who were nervous before the performance. He said that there is no need to worry. Just follow the example of your opponents and play along. He wished them good luck in their debut fight. The judge gave the command to start the fight. The match has begun. The Lucha Kings came to GCV to train the younger generation. Eddie grappled with Andrade. Andrade was thrown back by a powerful force. He tries to hold on, but his shoulders touch the floor. The referee starts counting, but Andrade arches and lifts his shoulders. He commands Eddie to relax a little. Eddie lifts him onto his shoulders. Andrade sits on Eddie's shoulders and says he'll give the signal. He whispers, "Come on," he will immediately attack, use the technique. Scissor legs. Then he whispers the word, "Now." Eddie's welcome powerbomb, in which a fighter lifts an opponent onto his shoulders and throws him forcefully to the floor. Eddie throws Andrade into the ring. Kalisto rushes to his friend's rescue, and Sean comes to Eddie. Kalisto charges at Sean. Sean pulls him off of him and climbs into the ring. Kalisto is happy. He thought Sean would be pinned down a lot, but the guy holds up well. Sean is ready to counter Kalisto's attack and takes him down with his arm. Eddie joins Sean. Following the script, the Lucha Kings were crushed by the double-team shock slam. So Eddie and Sean managed their debut match with the support of their teachers. The first match ended in victory for the white team. The second match features Russell and Sin, and their rivals are the Street Times. Their role is the same as the Lucha Kings. They are trying to help the new generation of wrestlers. In the spotlight, of course, Sin. The result of this match was supposed to be a complete victory for Cena and Russell. However, as the match progressed, their anger got the better of them. Russell reproached Jun for ignoring him. June said it's clear why. They quarreled constantly, two people who hate each other against a common enemy. The outcome of this meeting was too obvious. The fans cheered more and more. From that moment on, White's team became the main antagonist of the GCV, and the new team of Cena and Russell who opposed them. Anticipating this, the fans rejoiced more and more. Paku called Jun and Russell into his office and said that the organization wanted to conduct a survey, People's Choice poll, to find out what player promo people want to see. Jun asked, "What about a program to improve relations between fighters?" Paku didn't understand the question at all. Jun said that he and Russell would go through counseling sessions, similar to sessions with a psychologist. This would create many funny moments. Or Sin could wear Russell's costume, which he made fun of, and Russell wear Sin's costume. Russell asked why not wait for the survey results and then think about how to implement it. Paku said that they will change the voting results to suit themselves, and they need to move now. Russell was very indignant. He said that Jun himself said that the opinion of the audience is very important. Jun thought that Russell was still very young and did not understand how things worked. After a meeting, they decided that the best option would be to record the promo much earlier. Only trusted persons participated in this. Russell insisted that he should have waited for the results of the survey. Jun said they were doing everything right. Russell reluctantly said that in order to get a good result, they had to do something they shouldn't do. Jun really wanted to go on vacation. Jun was sitting at the bar. People said this guy looked like a wrestler, but they didn't recognize him. On TV, they showed him and Russell arguing with a psychologist. Sin shouted that if it weren't for him, then no one would know about Russell at all. And Russell said that Sin brought the psychologist to stress. The bar owner said that he installed cable only because of this couple. Jun asked who his favorite was, and the owner replied that of course Sin. He doesn't talk much and puts on a great show. After filming, Jun received a 2-week vacation. He arrived at his home for the first time since his father kicked him out. Jun didn't know how he would be received. Dad met Jun with a masterful blow and the guy fell onto the path. While he thought that neither Russell nor Paku hit him so hard, Jun's mom asked why her husband hit their son like that, after which Dad told Mom and Jun to come into the house. Jun left home after coming of age. "I wanted to prove that I was moving in the right direction." Looking back, he realized that it was a mistake. The father bought a lot of food and wanted his son to gain 10 kilograms. All Asian parents prove their love for their children through food and try to provide tastier food. Mom cried that her boy had lost a lot of weight. Jun was tired of explaining that he had put on muscle and was now in better shape than he was when he left home. The vacation ended and Jun flew home. Paku met him at the airport. They immediately went to the gym where Russell and Sean were training in the ring. They were happy that Jun had finally returned. Russell said that they received 50,000 votes during the poll, and in the next show, Russell will compete against Sean, and Jun's role is to help Russell the next time White's team interrupts them. The guys continued training, and Jun thought that Sean knew all of Russell's capabilities and his movements were well practiced. While Sean leads, Russell gives Sean the opportunity to show his strength at the right moments. 2 days later, as expected, the match between Russell and Sean was abandoned by White's team. And when Russell was in danger, a hero appeared. He needed to save Russell, wrap things up in the ring, and end it when commercial time came. During this, Cena needs to ignore everything, even the screams of the fans. After his vacation, this was his triumphant return and no one could stop him. Cena's fist beats out a head kick from Sean. Then he grabbed Sean by the neck and welcomed Diamond Cutter, in which the fighter jumps towards the opponent, grabs him by the head, and then slams the opponent's face into the floor. He laid him down in the ring. The spectators roared with delight. White, raising his hand high with the championship belt, rushed towards Cena. But Russell ran into him and knocked White down. Such shows will continue for 3 months. Greg Hart, Russell's uncle, was sitting in Harley's office. They were talking about something. In another room, Russell was telling Sin that he admitted that Sin helped him a little. They already looked at each other without the former enmity. The female psychologist said she was glad to see them like this. Russell replied that it was only because of her. The woman smiled and said that they managed it on their own. The woman is a professional who is in charge of a relationship improvement program known as Mrs. Shelby, a character played by Rebecca Watson. She said the boys wouldn't need her help anymore. The audience screamed in disappointment for Missy Sheldon not to leave. Rebecca played her role very well. The next day, Rebecca met Jun in the hallway and he said she did a good job. Rebecca Watson is a British actress. Everyone was interested not because of her beauty. She really loves what she does. She is also involved in wrestling. Jun decided that he would show her a couple of techniques. At this time, the employee called Jun to Harley. He said that Harley was waiting for Russell too. Harley had Paku and Greg, who turned to the guys and said hello. Russell and Jun widened their eyes. They didn't expect to see Greg here. Jun immediately introduced himself, but Greg said that he knew the guy very well. He is a conspicuous and problematic child. Jun said he was sorry that he was causing trouble. Greg laughed, shook Jun's hand and said that if he was sorry then he was not a villain, but what he does is great. Jun shouted that he wanted to learn from Greg, and Greg asked Harley if this nice guy is a villain. Greg told Harley that he was there to see something interesting. He meant Jun. He would love to work with these two guys. Harley didn't mind. He said that he came to give his nephew some lessons. And Sin too. This could be a great story. Harley asked if Greg's superiors knew about this, but he said that he did not inform his superiors. Greg said he would just spend his holiday working with the guys. If everything went well, they would move on. Paku said that the idea was good, and it would be possible to get approval from his superiors. They asked Russell what he thought about the idea of working with his uncle, and Russell said it would be fun. And Jun thought that few people get such a chance to work with a master. Greg Hart. In the 90s, he took responsibility for the organization himself. Although he is not as popular now, he was an icon at the time. The company had problems, and he could not show all his power. During training, Greg gave advice to wrestlers. He said that you need to use your power at the right moment so as not to waste energy. The timer should be in your head. He called Sin and told the guy to show what he was capable of. They got into the ring and Greg said they could work on the backflip. It's simple, but impressive. Greg took Jun's hand with one hand and rested his other hand on his shoulder, and he made a quick throw. Jun fell into the ring. He immediately jumped up and pushed off the ropes, and he rushed to attack Greg. Greg made a tackle and threw Jun on his back, and Jun was already flying to the floor, not understanding what had just happened. He asked Greg to show him the technique again. Jun attacked Greg with a straight right hand. Greg dodged to the side. He grabbed Jun's attacking hand, and he threw it over himself in the fall. Jun realized that you need to move quickly when using a technique. To make a more effective strike, this makes the fall look more impressive. Jun said he was ready to do it all again. He and Greg stood up. Jun fell, taking Greg with him, and threw him into the ring. Greg stood up and said Jun was taking too long at the start. He needs to work on his timing. Jun asked why it was so much easier to fall this time. Greg replied that the subconscious began to work, and his body did everything instinctively. In the evening, Harley and Greg discussed their training session. Harley asked Greg's opinion, and he replied that all athletes are wonderful. White should lose a little weight, but Sin is on a completely different level. Greg would like to speak out against him before he retires. Sin is better than most of the top fighters who compete in other matches. Greg said wrestling is in decline right now. Pac decided to act in films. Rock Cold will not fight due to a neck injury. And then Sin appeared. Greg said that it was his choice, but the main problem was how WWF head Bart Maxon would treat Sin. The company was passed to Maxon from his father when he was still a child, and in 20 years he made it successful. Some have said that he is a psychopath who will use any means to achieve his goal, but he is a passionate wrestling fan. But he has a problem with using Remling to his advantage. He is an ordinary New York businessman. He may be against Asians in his wrestling. Greg asked Harley if he would mind if he took Cena with him after all the matches were over. Harley asked what about Russell. If you take away Cena, Russell will be left without a team. Greg said that if his nephew gave up because of this, that's the most he could do. Harley realized that Greg couldn't be outdone. Greg said there is some intrigue ahead for Cena. If he gets even a fraction of the attention, he will be stopped immediately. Then Greg will step in and make him a star. Harley thought that the center of the GCV was now Sin. You can create interesting stories with it and it can last a year or more. But if you look at it from Jun's side, then he has a chance to get Greg's support. Apparently, the time has come to part with Sin. Harley said he should ask Sin what he thought. Jun immediately replied that he was refusing the offer. Greg said that this is a chance to become at least a second-class champion. But Jun said he was going to become a world champion and do it without outside support. And together with his partners, Dong's goal was to create a successful career in this place. If he does not do this, he will lose the attention of the audience and will be influenced by external factors. He knew that with the coming conflict among wrestlers, Canadian wrestlers would lose all their influence. Even if he gets a good job, when Greg retires, Jun will be thrown out of this place. Looking to the future, this deal is unprofitable. Greg said he was confident Jun could become a wrestling star. Happy Harley told Jun to go get ready for the promo shoot. The promotion was a huge success. After they said Greg Hart would appear, the tickets were sold out within 5 minutes. And this led to an unexpected situation. The day of the show, Greg walked into the locker room where Russell was sitting. He said the match looked like Russell was having a hard time with Cena. Russell said it was true. Greg said Russell needs to create distance with Cin. He said that Cena has no honor as a wrestler, nothing that Russell could take from him. Russell said he could learn a lot from Jun, but Greg told Russell not to forget that he was part of the Hart family. He walked away, leaving Russell deep in thought. Russell didn't know what to do. He was used to obeying his uncle. All spectators looked at the screen with great interest. Jun and Hart also looked at the screen, and Jun said that all the fans were waiting for Greg to come out, a little earlier. That number of tickets were purchased by Greg's fans who had not previously watched GCV. When these fans saw Russell, they perceived him as a nephew who listens to his uncle. No more, no less. If you pair this unpopular nephew with a villain like Sin, you can predict the reaction of the fans. Jun was very angry. He was going to become the hero of the day, and now his popularity was in question. He yelled at Harley to make sure Greg could get into the ring. Harley said that this is impossible. By order from above, Greg only participates in promotional matches. Also, if the fight is a promotional match, does Jun think the crowd will dislike Cena if he goes up against Greg? Jun said that they would go out with Russell. Two newcomers, Greg would beat him, but recognized their potential. Harley said why would Greg hit his nephew? Jun replied that he needed to come up with a reason. Harley said that he should let Sin do as he came up with. All the spectators were waiting for the appearance of the superstar. Greg prepared to leave. He greeted the crowd and said that while he was worried about his nephew, he was looking forward to great matches. Greg noted the wonderful wrestlers Bobby Ashley and Broken White, and his nephew Russell Hart, or Cena. Greg's voice sounded uncertain. Greg continued that Russell wanted to complain about something. Let Russell come out here and say everything openly. Russell went to the ring. Sin wished him good luck, and Russell thought that this was his first match against his uncle and he couldn't make a mistake. Russell said that he would do as his uncle asked, become the GCV champion, but he would do it with Sin. The uncle was indignant at his nephew's disobedience. Russell shouted that he loved his family, but he formed his beliefs himself, not his family. The uncle shouted angrily, "How could a boy say such a thing?" Then Sin appeared and said that he was embarrassed to interfere in family squabbles, but there was something here that interested him personally. Greg shouted at Sin to disappear until he could talk to his nephew, and Sin asked how much Greg was paid to work as a nanny. If Greg Hart came here to change the baby's diaper, and then control him, then Greg is a useless nanny. Sin yelled that his uncle was thinking about an heir because he was too old. Greg couldn't get a word in edgewise. He said that he came to help Russell, and Greg replied that he needed to calm down and let Russell speak. Sin walked up to Russell, put his hand on his shoulder and told him that this guy would surpass Greg. The hall froze at such statements. Sin continued that perhaps today, Russell will take all his uncle's fans for himself. Russell asked if Sin was crazy. Cena responded that Greg Hart is a great wrestler, but Russell must take the popularity that came to him from his uncle in a new direction. He turned to the audience and asked if they were interested in when this cute nephew will surpass his uncle. Greg said this might never happen. He said that in the past, in the present, and in the future, he will always be the best. Sin picked his ear and didn't believe a word Greg said. Then Greg said that if the boy doesn't believe it, then they are now in the ring and let him attack. Sin and Russell's mouths fell open. Greg rolled up his sleeves and prepared to fight. Sin rushed to attack, but Greg interrupted it with a sharp blow. Immediately he hit Sin in the back. Sin was on all fours, Greg towering over him. Russell stood behind his uncle. Sin yelled, "Is Russell really going to just stand there and watch?" Russell rushed at his uncle. Greg caught his nephew's hand. The stands roared with delight, but Sin got up and attacked Greg from behind, interrupting his attempt to take Russell down. Sin clenched his fist and prepared to finish Greg off, but Greg grabbed his fist and blocked it with his palm, got his head in a grip, and welcome snap suplex, in which the attacker applies a front-facing hold to the opponent, throws the opponent's arm over his shoulder, stuns the opponent and throws him hard, throwing Cena to the floor of the ring. Sin lay motionless, but Russell was already flying towards Greg. Viewers had never seen anything like this before. Sin and Russell take turns attacking Greg, but Greg overpowers them both. Now he is applying a painful hold to his nephew. Sin and Russell are lying in the ring while Greg stands undefeated. He picks up the microphone and says that was good. Russell and Sin sit exhausted on the floor and listen to Greg say that their course of action was wrong. And in order to declare something, you first need to achieve something. Let them become champions in the next match. Xing is very pleased. Now they have a new goal, a new task ahead of them. Thanks to Hart, they attracted new fans. They will become champions in the next match. Russell, June, and Sean came to see Greg off. Before leaving, Greg asked where June learned all the tricks. He replied that at first he was in indie wrestling. Greg said he doesn't have a high opinion of indie wrestling, and if June learned a lot there, he's truly talented. Russell's uncle told him that he would look forward to his success. The guys returned to their work. To transfer the right to enter the ring to another team member, one wrestler slaps the palm of the other. This is called a tag. The wrestler who passed the tag has 5 seconds to leave the ring. CN screamed for Russell to get out of the ring. 4 fighters 2-on-2 against each other. They fight 1-on-1, meet up with a teammate and continue the fight. In addition, they can demonstrate excellent techniques. The boys became the first tag team a week ago and must try their best. They thought about what moves they could show, and Russell said they needed to develop Sin's character more. Make him more cowardly or more screaming, Russell said. Additionally, Russell believed that he could use the shooting star press. although it is a very difficult technique. They went to try out some moves in the ring. Russell stood on the ring post to do the shooting star press. This is a difficult technique that requires flexibility and skill. Jumping forward from a height, the attacking fighter does a back somersault and lands on a prone opponent. Russell stood on the rope in the corner of the ring. He jumped and did a somersault. Sean and June looked on in admiration. Russell landed on the mats and asked how it happened. June replied that he had come up with the name for Russell's new finishing move, the crescent. June said that you can try to combine it, and the crescent moon will hide the flaws of the shooting star. They continued their work. A week later, the first tag team match took place, in which Sin and Russell began working together. Russell was lying in the ring, and Sin was reaching out to him with his hand. The audience shouted Russell's name. Due to the constant violation of the rules by the Lucha Kings, the judge pauses. Russell tries to tag Cena but can't get up and reach his arm. There is very little time left for their hands to touch. The judge reprimands the Lucha Kings and detains them. Sin rushes into the ring and immediately attacks. The opponent falls to the floor. The commentator shouts that Sin replaced Russell in time. Opponent rushes at Sin, but Russell appears from behind, grabs his opponent and German suplex throws him to the floor. The opponent's shoulders touch the ring. Russell pins him to the floor. Sin takes off and jumps towards the enemy. The second opponent rushes at Sin from behind. Sin repels the attack with one blow. Next comes a knee strike and a kick to the chin. Kallista, who tried to jump on Cena, was knocked down with a simple knee strike. Kallista doesn't do anything. He just lies there. Russell climbed to the top rope and looked like he was going for an aerial move. I'm very scared for him. This move was created by the guys in training. First, Sin knocks his opponent down with his knee, and then Russell will continue with his shooting star press. Russell masterfully creates a crescent moon in the air and falls on Kalisto. The referee starts counting. Sin raises his hand in victory. Russell also feels like a winner. The spectators shout out the name of the team, Sin Cell. A couple of days later, the semi-finals of the tag team tournament were defeated by two members of Team White. White himself came to celebrate the victory. Their next opponent is the Sin Cell tag team. The next match will be interesting to watch. Will Sin Cell be able to defeat these monsters? Paku tells the match participants that their match time is 30 minutes. This is a match from impressive newcomers, and the winning team will earn the right to challenge the defending champions GCV. The goal of the match is 3.5% of spectators. Match day. The arena was filled to the brim, with more than 200 people sitting on standing ground. This was the largest number of people at the match. White's team entered the ring wearing masks. Russell Hart gets into the ring, and his partner is Sin. The hall explodes with shouts, Sin Cell, Sin Cell. The match has begun. Russell and the opponent stand in different corners of the ring. At the same time, they launch an attack. Cien and Sean stand outside the ring. Russell gets elbowed by Eddie. At the same time, Russell kicks Eddie in the leg. Eddie falls. Russell lands a precise kick to the legs. Russell grabs Eddie's ankle and starts applying a submission hold. The capture is excellent. Eddie breaks free from the hold. What impressive strength he has. Russell loses his balance and falls. Sean jumps into the ring and hits Russell as hard as he can. Amazing teamwork from Sean and Eddie. They don't let Russell breathe. Sean grabs Russell's hand and throws him onto the ropes. Russell screams in pain. Russell pushes off the ropes and attacks Sean. Sean runs towards him. The fighters collide in the middle of the ring. The two of them knocked each other back on the crossline. They must have taken a lot of damage. They both go to their respective corners. Looks like they need a replacement. Russell weakly crawls towards Sin's hand, trying to reach him. Sin hurries him. White's team is the first to change fighters. Eddie rushes to the ring. Russell's position becomes dangerous. But Russell managed to switch and Eddie meets Cena's knee. Eddie tips over and falls. Sin grabs Eddie and throws a stronger and larger opponent far away from himself. Without giving Eddie time to recover, Sin quickly approaches him and pins his shoulders to the floor. The judge starts counting, but the lights in the hall go out. When the lights come on, White is standing in the arena. All the fighters are lying on the floor, exhausted. What happened inside the ring? Russell, who was outside the ring, lost consciousness. Even the judge lost consciousness. Now he will not be able to disqualify the bully. White commands Sean to finish off his opponents. Sean runs up to Sin and he whispers to Sean to act more gently. Eddie holds Russell in one corner. Sean, on the other hand, has Cena in his grip. Two monsters are about to demonstrate a new technique. Team White lifts Team Sincel onto his shoulders. They are now using the technique that Jun created in training. It was as if two glasses collided with each other. An interesting technique where you can hit two opponents at once. It was called Let's Be Healthy Like Toast. The spectators froze in horror. June, lying on the floor, thinks that despite the fact that the trick was performed perfectly, it is very painful. This is some kind of extraordinary skill. Team White overwhelms Sincel. with their ignorant and monstrous skill. It's really scary. Will there be a team to stop these two? Sin-Sel couldn't stand it. They both ended up outside the ring. The audience chants Sin-Sel's names. A loud roar shouting White's name drowned out the screams of the audience. Bobby walks into the arena. Who shouts that he has waited so long to meet the cowardly bastard? Bobby immediately attacks White, not allowing him to come to his senses. He throws White to the floor and starts beating him. He punishes the match violator flawlessly. White just covers himself with his hands. White is hopelessly defeated, and his team is at a loss. Russell and Sinam come to their senses and pull Eddie and Sean out of the ring by their legs. The audience cheers and shouts endlessly, Sin-Sel, Sin-Sel. Russell and Cin stand in the ring again as the crowd cheers. Bobby dragged White backstage, and when the interference was eliminated, the match continued, and Sin-Sel inflicted enormous damage on opponents. But Eddie grabbed a chair and ran at Cena. While Sin was fighting with Sean, Eddie hit him from behind with a chair, and then Sean attacked him with a knee to the face. The fight was already outside the ring. Sin was attacked from two sides. Where is Russell? Russell appeared on the turboons. Why did he climb so high? What is he going to do? Is it really Crescent? But it will be easy to see and avoid being hit. Russell got ready to jump. Sin suddenly rises from below, grabs both opponents and holds them down. Jumping from such a crescent position is like risking your life. Russell seemed frozen in midair. This technique is only possible if all team members have great trust in each other. Russell landed on the team of White and Cena, who caught him. The commentator screamed about Russell's dizzying crescent. At this time, the judge regained consciousness and began the countdown. The match ended in victory for the Sin-Sel team. In the locker room, Jun asked Puck if the match was worth the advertising costs. He replied that the match was amazing and justified everything. At this time, the employee brought in today's ratings for the show. The best rating of 3.5% was when Greg was on the show. What rating did today's match get? A receptionist walks along the hotel corridor. He knocks on the door of the room and Greg Hart answers it. The receptionist said that Mr. Greg received an urgent fax from someone named Sin. Greg thanked the receptionist, and he showered him with compliments, saying that he was a passionate fan of Greg Hart. The sounds of a fight were heard from the next room. The wrestlers found out who should shine brighter during the match. It often happens that wrestlers fight over who will be better accepted by the public. While most of the fighters in the GCV are friends, the WWF is a battleground in which it is difficult to survive. Sin sent Greg the rating of the last match. It amounted to 4.1%. This was the highest rating. June went into the rocking room and met Russell there. Russell was in great shape. He surpassed his star uncle. All they have to do is become tag team champions. They were called by two wrestlers, Montez and Angelo, from the Street Times team. These were experienced wrestlers who enjoyed causing chaos during their matches. They were the current GCV tag team champions. The match between Street Times and Sin-Sel received a lot of praise. The guys dressed up in other people's costumes, and the audience really liked it. Additionally, the fighters' legs were tied during this match. There are no rules that prohibit leg tying. The fighters did not violate anything. Montez jumped to Russell, lost his footing, and falling hit him with his head in the stomach. They hit each other as they fell. The commentator asked, "Is it even considered that they beat each other?" Both fighters lay on the floor and the referee began the count. But then Sin began his work, grabbed the judge by the leg and dragged him out of the ring. The judge hissed at him that it wasn't in the script, but Sin replied that the audience would love it. Angelo kept up with Sin and pulled out the hidden tape. The guys tied the legs of the judge to the joyful screams and laughter of the audience. Montez and Russell lay in the ring and swore at their partners. Angelo was delighted with the match. It was a lot of fun. The tag team championship match was not only funny, but also interesting. Flying knee strike from Cena hits Angelo in the neck. It is followed by crescent from Russell, which falls from a height onto the lying Angelo. The judge counts. 1, 2, 3, the audience rejoices. Winners announced. Russell Hart and Shing. The screams of the spectators can be heard even outside the stadium. Some people might think it was all fake. Costumes that were changed for greater effect, overacting to create the mood. A match with a predetermined result. Then everything related to planning, cinema, theater, can also be called fake. Everything the guys showed to the public was real. Sin-Sel became the best fan-favorite team in the GCV. And this was the first of many belts that Kim Junho was to earn. Two older men were discussing the match and saying it was good. They said that a character like Sin would add flavor to the team. But there is one problem. He is too close to the younger Hart. One of the men said that they shouldn't worry about the Hart family, and he would bring Cena to the team. Park listened in amazement, as Jun was told that t-shirt sales were going through the roof, and his salary was $50,000. The older man told Sin that this was very little for such a fighter. He deserves better. This man was Triple Ash, a figure who controlled not only the WWF's past and present, but also its future. Jun thought that if he went to Ash, it would definitely give him a chance to succeed. Ash invited Jun to work with him. Jun thought about it. He wanted to make the GCV he called home a better place, in order to prove to the whole world the value of every fighter present here, and in the end, make Sin worth more than in his previous life. Sin is the man who will become the god of professional wrestling. Russell is laying in the ring, and Sin tries to lift him up. He yells that Russell is an idiot and overdid it. Did something really bad happen to him? Russell opened his eyes and asked Sin not to be an idiot. The screen showed Sin screaming at Russell not to die. The new script prescribed bromance, a non-sexual friendship between 2 or more men. Sin carried the injured Russell backstage. Russell, holding back his laughter, quietly asked Sin to marry him. Cena really wanted to throw Russell on the floor with all his might. Paku shouted in delight that the ratings were growing. T-shirts were selling and Sincel was the best team. He said that the guys are the kings of capitalism who can do anything for money. A few weeks ago, Nasal Triple Ash told Jun that he didn't want to disparage GCV, but WWF was a better place for him. He said that Paku and Harley should understand what is best for Sin and think about his offer. Harley told Sin that this was a good opportunity for him, but Sin replied that he shouldn't rush into it. The next issue he and Harley were deciding was how to get permission from the authorities to increase the capacity of the show by 2,000 seats by renting a large stadium. Harley said management had decided to look into the matter if ratings rose to 10%. At the moment, the rating was 6%. Jun thought about it. How to gain another 4%. Harley said he has a plan. Betrayal, bloodshed, violence. Such a scenario will only target adults. Jun replied that he had another plan. A show that families will watch. That's what business is. This is necessary in order to revive the era of all generations. There was a period in professional wrestling when wrestlers with bad guy images retired. At that time, the victory of good over evil began to triumph in the ring. Children could watch the show, and this time was called the Age of All Generations. Sean became one of its representatives in the future. Harley said he would let the wrestlers think about what the new scenario would look like. The guys began to create an image, working as hard as they could, creating regional championships, congratulating children on their birthday, attracting celebrities and more. CN was in the ring to welcome the state of Georgia. Ordinary workers joyfully greeted the wrestling fighters in the ring. The number of spectators was constantly growing. In addition, GCV announced an additional recruitment of fighters, and those who passed the casting joined them. It was surprising for Jun to see Adam among the newcomers, who immediately attacked Jun and called him an arrogant brat. Adam Silverland, the friend Junho has been with since he left home. The one who deceived and bullied Jun after his professional debut in his previous life. Adam wanted all the attention to be on him. He shouted that Jun was an Asian bastard and punched him in the face. Jun didn't forget that this guy gave him a laxative sandwich. Adam yelled that Jun didn't think he was popular enough, and he would kill him for that. He demanded that Jun tell his superiors to give Adam a promotion. The question came from behind. What's going on here? All the wrestlers gathered in the locker room. Eddie asked Adam, is he a newbie who just arrived? And Sheamus asked if he was crazy. At this time, Paku entered the locker room, who told Jun that they needed to resolve important issues and pushed Adam away with his hand. In passing, he told Bobby to take care of the new guy, and Bobby immediately got down to business. Adam realized that life was not a success. To attract new viewers, GCV gradually began to reduce the level of violence in the show and was preparing a new family show. On this show, they began to make the wishes of sick children come true. Boy Willie dreamed of meeting Bobby Ashley and they met. Willie also met Sean, and this meeting was very joyful for the child. Willie wanted to perform in the ring and his wish came true. He hit White with all his might, and he screamed in pain, and he fell into the ring. Everyone screamed that Willie had knocked out White. The nurse who accompanied Willie said that she didn't understand professional wrestling before, but now she sees that their work is hard and good. On the radio show All About Wrestling, the hosts said that the duo of Sincel should hand over the title this time, despite the fact that they are the most popular team. But if you separate them, it will be an event that will eclipse even the change in the image of the Huskies in White. Of course they are a team, but Sin plays a big role there. Junho also thought that his duo with Russell needed to be disbanded, only then the show could develop and grow. It's just business. The next match was won again by the Sincel team. The total number of spectators was 10,384 people. At the meeting, it was decided that the organization needed a larger stadium. The writers said there was some bad news. The bosses want to stop the show and have Sin attack the wounded Russell. Everyone was shocked by this news. Jun couldn't believe his ears. Unfortunately, The order was given by the director of the WWF and was not subject to discussion. Although June clearly answered, no. Of course, Triple Hash was behind it. Russell annoys them, as does the rest of the Hart family, and they decide to lower his status. Everyone shouted that this was impossible. The success of the GCA is the merit of the Sincell team. Why did the people at the top want to disband it? June thought that between Russell and Triple it was necessary to choose one. He had to prioritize. After all, his stage persona was that of a bad guy. 2 weeks later, an accident occurred at a match that no one expected. Sin spoke into the microphone that he was now main event, a fighter who competes in the eponymous match at the end of the show. But there is one reason why Cena cannot be called the main star of this event. This reason is the tag team. There is an opinion that performers participating in teams cannot perform alone. The audience expected that the guys would soon disband the team. The whole question was how they would do it. They will become enemies, or will they shake hands and calmly go their separate ways? Paku met June and said that his superiors were putting pressure on him. June replied that he needed a push to betray Russell. Paku replied that there was still time. Not everything was spelled out in the script. He said that he would convey all of Sin's wishes to the writers and management. For the first time, the weekly GCV show was held in a stadium with 2,000 seats. A tag team championship match between the duo of Sincell and Team White. The guys performed at a faster pace than usual. Sin grappled with Sean. At first the match was full of aerial moves and sudden finishes, and that's when Russell wanted to perform his finishing move. He slipped on the rope. Surprised, he turned over in the air, and he fell into the ring. Sin turned away from Sean and stared at the prone Russell. Russell couldn't get up. The spectators froze in alarm. What happened? No one in the ring could understand what happened. Has Russell slipped up? Will the match be suspended now? The judge leaned towards Russell, and he demanded that the match be stopped. Russell is injured. Sean asked Sean what happened. Sin, without departing from the script, struck him print an oblique blow to the opponent's chest with a reverse upward blow. The commentators shouted that even though Cena's partner was injured, Cena didn't care and attacked his opponent. Sean asked what Sin was doing, but he continued to fight. He whispered to Sean that he was going to change the show's script. Let Sean and Eddie get together and defeat him. There are no more than 10 minutes left until the end of the show. This is enough for the guys to prepare for a counterattack. Harley saw what was happening and said that since Russell was injured, what Sin was doing was the only option. Sean hit Cena with a big knee strike. Commentators said that CIN couldn't cope without Russell. Even Eddie, who was standing outside the ring, jumped out and attacked. At this time, doctors carried Russell away on a stretcher. The injury was serious. Eddie beat Cena with a chair. The guy couldn't get up. Sin suddenly attacked Eddie, and he doubled over from the blow. Sin began to rise. Sean attacked Cena again. Sin grabbed a chair and threw a hard punch to Sean's face. Sin started beating Sean with a chair, screaming, "Die!" Sin stood in the ring while Sean and Eddie lay on the floor, after which Sin put a chair in the ring and sat down heavily on it. This all happened a week before Team Sincell was disbanded.